Well, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock. Welcome to our council meeting, June 5th, 2024. Before we begin, I want to recognize and acknowledge the traditional keepers of this land with whom we share today. The Township of Southgate is a part of the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Six Nations of the Grand River, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Haudenosaunee, and Saugeen Métis. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are as it reflects our histories. May we live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. Madam Clerk, is there anyone registered for open forum this morning?
Yes, Mayor Milne, we have Heather and Tom Arnott. I'm not sure whether they're speaking together or separately, but.
Morning, Tom. Welcome. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Mayor Milne, our deputy mayor and staff as well, or council members and staff, we just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. And Heather and I seem to be at a lot of meetings, but we'd like to be part of the process and add value. And, there's so much apathy out there with people just not really caring. I mean, the voter turnout, all that kind of stuff. So we really, appreciate being part of this. Something we want to address today is one of the issues on the, or one of the pieces on the agenda about the renaming of some roads around Wilder Lake. And we've lived in Southgate now for 14 years, same location. Almost since the get-go, it was so confusing about trying to get people to our house. It was always tough getting service people to our house. It was always tough to getting deliveries to our house. People just couldn't find it, whether they were using GPS or the old MAPs, if everybody knows what an MAP is. But it's always been a chore. And we just think that with this application that's been submitted to some road name changes, it furthers the communication, and we're hoping to look at things and hopefully that they can be simplified so that we can move forward to this. Now, something I want to make about the Wilder Lake area. I personally have a bias that I think it's the nicest chunk of property, so to speak, or area in Southgate, and if not, the county of Grey. Okay, we've got a pleasing little spot here now. With that, people want to come and live, they want to come and work, and they want to come and play in the area, which means they've got to get there and they've got to leave. I think that trying to simplify those issues, make it easier for people to do that. And it's only going to get more significant as time moves on with the number of people coming to this area. And something I think that gets overlooked is first responders. I mean, if service people have trouble getting to the area, what about first responders, fire, police, paramedics? I mean, when minutes mean the difference between life and death, I think we have to make it simple to get to the area and do what we need to do when people come here. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Heather. She's going to extrapolate further on some of the issues involved. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Milne, Deputy Mayor Barbara. Can you guys hear me okay? All council, all staff, and everyone who is on live stream. So I'm going to read quite a bit today rather than just try to speak to this, because I don't want to miss any points that we've been trying to express here. We are writing in response, we are here today in response to the staff report CL 2024022, which is the road renaming sections of Southgate Road 26 and Homestead Road. This really wasn't how I was going to get started, and I do have to appreciate there was an error in attaching a very important document to this staff report pertaining to this renaming, as it was the actual application. But I do understand that it has come from, confirmation has come from that it is from Randy By or By Construction wanting to rename the road. We didn't know that when we put these words together. So it may need a little bit of an adjustment, or it may not. So as we go through this, well, hopefully I can make my points, our points. We're requesting council decline the proposal as presented. When reading the agenda for this June 5th meeting, we were quite disappointed and concerned with the proposal. We do have to question staff the need for these changes, as not all of the proposal, as not all of the proposal makes sense in a navigational point of view. So we don't agree with this, trying to make this simpler, because it's going to make it worse.
Heather, if I could just interrupt for a second, I'm going to declare pecuniary interest. The
Very
application
good.
is from my brother-in-law. Deputy Mayor, take the chair.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Here we are again, less than 9 months from the last application, and we're struggling to figure out the need for the changes. It's not the cost of signs at the corners. This financially affects residents having to change addresses, the county, the need to notify base map providers, etc. These concerns were addressed at the September 6th meeting, when an application was put forward to rename these same sections of Southgate Road 26. And at that time, it was brought forward by the public and by council members that the surrounding neighborhood should be notified of these potential changes with their input before consideration that could be, so they could be made. That, as far as we know, has not yet happened. We certainly, and we know neighbors we spoke with have not received any notification. It's unfortunate we have to remind staff that local area residents use these roads on a daily basis and struggle with service and courier delivery companies, visitors having difficulty in navigating our homes, as Tom suggested already. What about emergency services, ambulances, fire, police? We checked the township's website on emergency services. And to remind anybody who maybe isn't aware of it, but our fire services come out of Durham, West Grey. Our hospital isn't even named in the township emergency section. The hospital that services really our area is Durham Hospital. And it's not even mentioned. The only two that are mentioned are Markdale and Mount Forest. Southgate doesn't have a hospital. Homestead is a business in this area, and we acknowledge staff comments in the past. It is an economic driver. We don't deny that. But your focus on Homestead appears to have no regard for the other 25 plus residents and taxpayers in the area. Do we not receive any type of consideration for this? Why does one business owner who wants to fix the roads the way he wants and rename them get to have all of this influence? We're struggling with this. March 7th of this year, we reached out to Jim Ellis requesting some proper signage to be installed at the many corners as the roads twist and turn, especially around Wilder Lake area. At Jim's request, we provided that detailed information and pictures of the corners where signage was required. On the same day, we also sent an email to Grey County Roads Department. When we visited their website, we found 3 maps of that area that provided different road names or were not marked at all. Matthew Wortman replied the same day, advising some of the maps on their website are provided by base map providers, which are like TomTom, ESRI, all of the different GPS companies. He promised to send requests to all of them to update their maps. And on May 10th, less than a month ago, Matthew kindly sent us an email to advise us all of the road names had been updated. Finally, in particular was Southgate Road 26, east from Southgate 41, then north for the 300 meters, then it runs again east from the corner at Old Railway Road. Navigation systems can now provide better and consistent routes from Highway 6. We kept Jim Ellis up to date on all of this. With this application, all of this work would have to be all corrected again. And how many months is that going to take? Recently, when we asked Jim for an update on the road signs, Jim advised there was a new application to rename this section of Southgate 26. Lindsay and Jim confirmed it was for the section from Southgate 41 to Homestead Golf Course only, renaming it Wilder Lake Road. That's now how we have found out that it was the applicant. There was an actual external applicant that came in with that. We're not particularly opposed to this section, as we had said at the September meeting. If it's truly necessary to rename this section, then it's the most logical name. But we have to stress, is it necessary? The staff report indicates they received an application, but we did not see it attached to the agenda meeting. However, we are adverse to the renaming to Homestead Road for this 300 meters that runs north and south from the corner of Old Railway Road to the T in the road at the golf course. This was discussed and opposed at the September 6th meeting, with a council member commenting, we don't need to be naming our roads after businesses. And if the business owner wants to name roads after their business, perhaps they could do it in their own subdivision. Staff had mentioned this in the staff report, the confusion leading into Homestead. Isn't it more appropriate to name the road leading into the golf course possibly? Like the golf course, the clubhouse, the subdivision? From what will now possibly be Wilder Lake Road as Homestead Road. It's not an assumed road yet by the township. Easy road to rename at this point. Name it Homestead Road if he needs a road. Another important issue in this proposal is the change in the fire numbers and causing a break in continuity of these fire numbers. As like most rural roads in Southgate, fire numbers are primarily designated to match the road numbers. So as we said in September, we have to ask the question, is the township moving away from using a numbered system and naming rural roads? Wilder Lake Road, as well as Southgate 26, fire numbers begin with, guess what? 26. Why would you break that continuity for 300 meters? Then start it back up at the corner where Southgate Road 26 continues east. 300 meters. You're going to remove the 26 from the fire numbers. It's not making sense.
Heather, if I could just interrupt for a second. Do we have anyone else on the list for open forum? I want to be cognizant of time. We have limited time and generally it's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Are you?
Just about done.
Okay, thank you.
It's critical we have consistency, as I said, for ambulances and paramedics to travel navigate these Durham roads. With Durham Hospital ER hours permanently changing to 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily and longer travel to the closest hospital, 1 minute lost would be critical in saving lives. We don't need this complication of inconsistent fire numbers just because it would be nice for a few people to have this road name changed. Are the large Homestead and arrow signs that have been installed on each corner of this corner not enough to find the business? When asked, Jim Ellis's response was that staff did not have an issue with the size of these signs and staff didn't feel they were distracting. We still have not received any confirmation if these signs are on private or township property. With this application within 300 meters, we could potentially have 5 road names: Wilder Lake Road, Viola Rock Cove, Homestead Road, Old Railway Road, and finally, Southgate 26. Please leave this 300-meter road as Southgate Road 26. At least when Wilder Lake Road ends, there will be continuity to find Southgate 26. Add to this confusion, we have another road that comes in from Highway 6, traveling east-west, and it's Southgate Glenelg Township town line. It changes names to Old Railway Road, then becomes Southgate 26, and there's no road signs for this. Reading this is confusing, let alone trying to drive and navigate it. Please, we implore council to end this insanity and confusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Is there anyone else registered for open forum? I'll turn it back over to Mayor Milne.
Thank you, Barb. No, no one else. So thank you, Tom and Heather. Confirmation of the agenda. We do need to make a couple changes, or one change in particular. Our senior planner, Bill White, needs to leave almost immediately after his report. So I wonder if the council is okay to move his reports up before the delegations. Well, there's five reports that he wants to deal with. Is council okay with that? If we amend the agenda to do that? Not hearing any opposition, Madam Clerk?
Just a further amendment, the application for the last, or what was just spoken
Yep.
open forum, that will be added as well. The application was from.
Yep,
Randy
absolutely.
Bai.
Okay, so if someone could make that motion to accept the agenda as amended, Martin and Jason? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So, and I apologize to our delegates. See one there. We'll get through this as quickly as we can. Good morning, Bill. Welcome. And the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Milne and members of council and staff, and appreciate the indulgence. I'm about to head out to see my wife. She's due for surgery today, and the sooner I can get there, the better. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate your support. The first report, I believe, is PL 2023-044, which is for the C3 zone. This report provides a zoning bylaw amendment to add restaurant, tavern, and convenience store as a permitted use in the C3 zone. We provided a staff report a few months ago on this proposal. It originated out of a email from one of the property owners to reinitiate a zoning amendment application, a zoning amendment initiated by the township to add these three uses to the C3 zone. That amendment was initiated back in 2021. It went to public meeting, and there was no significant comments or opposition to the addition of the three uses to the C3 zone. When we got to looking at implementation, we were able to identify in our previous report the properties at the corner of Highway 10 and Main that are currently zoned C3 or some derivative of that, where the intent would be to add restaurant, taverns, and convenience stores as permitted uses. Subsequent to our first report, we went through the bylaw in detail again and found two locations on Main Street West near Yonge where the C3 zone is permitted, and then a zoning out on Highway 10 and the Southgate town line. That is the only site that would not have access to municipal water and sanitary sewer. Despite looking throughout the bylaw using the county GIS and searching the amendments in the bylaw, we have not found any other properties. So there are 11 of them. Of the 11 properties, 5 of them have had rewritten zones. So some form of amendment to add, or actually in one case detract, certain uses from the C3 zone. So if you're looking on page 3 of the report at the top, there's 565 Main Street East, 141 Main Street West, the one on the Artemisia Southgate town line, and then 2 on Highway 10. Don't need to go into a lot of detail on those, except to say there's one of those at 141 Main that only allows motor vehicle service stations. So if council chooses to go with the C3 zone change to add those 3 uses, that property would not benefit, for lack of a better word, because the way that amendment is written, it only allows a motor vehicle service station and accessory structures on it. In the proposal, we've got a link to the original email request and our past planning report and your direction. At this point, we're not recommending that if you wish to proceed, you wouldn't need to give further notice of public meeting, but you could do that if you wish to do so. Just a little bit about the three uses. A tavern, as you probably well know, is kind of a dated use. It's defined in the township zoning bylaw. It is a premise where alcohol is consumed. As we all know nowadays, the liquor laws have been broadened considerably, and you can consume liquor in a variety of premises, including eating establishments, of course, which are also permitted in the C3 zone. A convenience store, we all pretty much know what that is. It is also defined in your zoning bylaw, and they're allowed in a wide variety of locations, including the areas like the highway location or downtown. They're also allowed at busy central locations and neighborhoods, corners, arterial roads, and such. The official plan allows for these three uses. They're specifically mentioned in, as I recall, the highway, the arterial designation. The downtown commercial designation also allows retail stores, inns, and restaurants, and so forth. So allowing these three uses, in my view, would be complying with your official plan. The rural designation, however, where the site is located at the corner of the town line and Highway 10, it does not allow for taverns or convenience stores necessarily, unless there's some form of tourist related cluster. I suppose one could be included at that. I wouldn't define that location particularly as a tourist cluster, although of course it could be frequented by tourists. The provincial policy, I think this amendment would be consistent with that. I've been through the official plan generally and can answer any more questions if you have concerns about it. Finally, just typically what does a C3 zone require? Usually you're looking at a 30-meter frontage, so that's roughly what, 100 feet, and 2,000 square meters of lot area, and there's some other provisions in there. Most of those lots would meet that. I believe one of the properties on Highway 10 already has a zoning amendment due to either lack of frontage or lack of area, but because they have that zoning amendment, they would be allowed to have a restaurant, tavern, or convenience store on that parcel because their lot size is recognized in the rezoning they previously achieved. So my recommendation is that the words restaurant, tavern, or convenience stores on lands with municipal water and sewer services be added to the C3 zone. There's a draft amendment there in the end of the report that's missing the word on lands with municipal services, but it's in the bylaw properly. But the reference to hotel and motel, all I've done is move hotel from part B of that section to be beside motel, and then added a new B with restaurant, tavern, or convenience store only on lands with municipal water and sewer services. That wording is fairly consistently used as far as water and sewer services in the bylaw, and so that's been adopted in this proposed amendment. That's my presentation on this report, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer.
Thank you, Bill. And you're right. Some of us of a certain vintage may recall what a tavern is. And yeah, it's a little dated, I'll say. Okay, I need a mover and seconder first, and I neglected to get that. Barb and Martin, thank you. Any questions from council? Barb? Oh, Barb, go ahead.
Just through you, Mayor Milne, and good morning, everyone, to Bill. This this may not be an exhaustive list. I noticed that in your map, which was very, very helpful, there are 2 convenience establishments that currently exist that aren't listed. Would they be affected in any way? There's one located at the Foodland parking lot and one located at Artemisia and Maine.
All right. So the original township initiated zoning bylaw amendment only added these 3 uses to only add these 3 uses to the C3 zone. There may be other convenience stores that aren't zone C3 that would be in some other commercial zone, and they would not be affected. So they would not be affected by this amendment. So I'm assuming the ones you're mentioning aren't in a C3 zone. So they would be permitted in the zone that they're in, or they could possibly be existing uses that are non-conforming.
Thank you.
Martin,
Thank you.
or sorry.
No, it's
Jason?
actually
Oh, go ahead.
Jason.
No,
Are you
you already
sure?
called him.
All right, go ahead, Martin.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, and to that point, this is a highway commercial C3. My only and I only have comments. I kind of agree with it. With the gas station, nobody's gonna be wanting to put anything different there because it is a gas station with the fuel pumps and everything. So I support this.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Jason.
I guess mine was for the Artemisia Town Line property. Bill, just wondering why, when it's not on municipal services, it couldn't qualify for that. I know there was some interest. That used to be a convenience store there years ago. I was
Mhm.
just wondering.
If I may, through the mayor to the
Yep.
council member, my feeling was when I looked at the official plan designation, and it doesn't really allow that if you were to start fresh, because it's not part of a tourist cluster. So in the case of highway commercial or downtown commercial areas, the official plan encourages these kinds of restaurant, retail stores, convenience stores, taverns, tavern-like facilities. Well, not as much on that highway location, in particular the official plan. So my concern would be that it wouldn't be complying with the township official plan. You could possibly make a case for it being a non-complying use. I'm not sure a restaurant or particularly a tavern or a drinking establishment alone would be good there, but it was just the official plan, underlying official plan policies that concern me about that. And the lack of municipal services. Typically these can generate high needs for water and sewer. So that's not all, I haven't looked at the lot size and adequacy of all that on that particular property. And if they wanted to come forward and initiate the zoning on their own, they could do that, and those issues could be looked at in more detail.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any other questions? Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to Councillor Rice's question, this property at the corner of Southgate and Artemisia, this wouldn't change the zoning they currently have. This just doesn't add the restaurant, convenience store option. I guess what I'm saying is that if at some point in the future they were to be looking to expand to a market type, Misty Meadows type establishment where there may be a bakery or there may be a lunch counter or there may be just groceries, this changing the C3 does not preclude the zoning they currently have in place.
Bill?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the bylaw regarding the same zoning amendment report. Bill, do you have anything further to add?
No, Mayor Milne.
Okay, thank you. Someone care to move that, please? Monica and Martin. Any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Next one is the zoning bylaw amendment report regarding Greg and Margaret Ford. Someone care to move that, please? Jim and Monica. Thank you.
Mayor Milne, just for a point of clarification, there's two motions here. So there's two separate ones.
So there's recommendation one and recommendation two. So what you're saying is the mover needs to pick one of those.
There needs to be a mover and seconder for both.
Oh, okay. So the recommendation one is what we're going to deal with first.
Correct, yeah.
All right, very good. We're learning on the fly here. So is the mover and seconder okay with the, yeah, okay, good. Bill, please.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. The reason that the bylaws are being split is because this application covered two issues that are really not directly related. The first initiative was for a garden suite or temporary unit or granny flat at 40 Uncle Tom Crescent on the current zone lands. The second related to an agreement of purchase and sale and would rezone a triangle of land that would be transferred to this property from open space 129 to the same zone as the main site, but neither of the two issues are directly related. You know the property, it's a rural estate subdivision kind of east of Gray Road 109, south of Southgate Road 6. The applicant submitted a very clear site plan, shows the location of the existing home, the triangle of land to the north, the edge of the storm pond, and then the proposed granny suite between the home and the their own garage, and the granny suite would be further back from the street than the existing home. Included in the report is a street view shot of the location where the proposed granny suite is to be placed, and also a shot of the triangle of land which will be added to the subject property if the rezoning and the agreement of purchase and sale goes through. You can see they're sort of really not related to each other. But since the property was going through rezoning anyway, it was appropriate to include it in the same application, in my view. So I've outlined the difference between the rezoning of the parcel of land that would be transferred to the applicants from the township. The township should consider that rezoning completely independent of the transfer of land. And that means it just means you should look at how it affects the ground and how it complies with current planning policies and the impact of the lands in the neighborhood. And in my view, that transfer of that triangle of land and changing it from the underlying zone to from the open space zone to the same zone as the front of the house would be appropriate physically on the site, and would not impact on the stormwater management and would not negatively impact on the neighborhood. The rezoning of the property to allow a garden suite was subject to some discussion. There were no concerns from the County of Gray or any of the utilities, but there was significant public concern expressed about the precedent set by granny flats. There was concern about the OS 129 zone change. A lot of discussion around restrictive covenants, and just I know council may have had some later submissions to them on that. I've spoken with the chief building official, and it was my position at the time that I did not believe that restrictive covenants, especially restrictive covenants, are between developers, landowners, and purchasers. And to that degree, they're not other applicable law under the Building Code Act. And the township's chief building official was quite clear on that, that he is not bound to enforce restrictive covenants that are on private property. I'd mentioned that I believe that the rezoning of the open space triangle is appropriate. It will reduce maintenance costs. It doesn't impact on the stormwater pond. As I said, it seems to, the lands kind of link in with the existing home, and putting that in the same zone seems to make sense. There was some concern that the township didn't apply for a severance for that triangle. And like the provincial and federal government, the township is exempt from the Planning Act provisions regarding transferring of land. So you do that like every other municipality in Ontario through a reference plan and a deed, and following your disposition of land bylaw, which is my understanding you have done. The main issue really here is the granny flat. The location of this proposed granny flat is flat. It seems to be suitable for the unit. The wooded area behind the existing home would not be impacted by the unit, nor would the triangle of land be needed or instrumental at all in putting up this granny flat. The septic system and well are not impacted by the proposal based on the drawing that's been submitted. There's a 2-car garage and long concrete driveway to accommodate parking for this unit. The township official plan states that garden suites or additional residential units are an excellent opportunity for affordable rental housing or providing housing for a family member, and that's exactly what's proposed here. There's also another section that allows for additional residential units in separate buildings, and that's again what's proposed here. This property is over 0.4 hectares in size, so it doesn't require certain studies on the septic system. Under the official plan, you can grant these kinds of garden suites as defined in your zoning bylaw for up to 20 years. There's quite a lot of information about additional residential units coming forward to you in the provincial policy statement, in the 2024 planning statement that we reviewed with you a few weeks ago. We all know about the need for housing. We all know about the need to house our aging parents, how important this is. And we're in the process of completing the report for you on the as of right additional housing units that are being required and recommended and implemented by the province in fully serviced urban areas based on the 2024 provincial planning statement that came out in May and is likely to be approved in July. You will have discretion on non-service properties like this in the future. But certainly your official plan now supports this kind of housing in a variety of locations, including rural ones. You've done it in other situations where there's water, private water and septic. This one is located appropriately. I'm likely to recommend, and this you have a new director starting, and we need to have further staff discussions, but I think I would be recommending that this kind of garden suite be allowed as additional residential units in rural subdivisions with certain criteria being met. We'll get into that later with you, but I just wanted to say that because I believe this is an appropriate use. It's an important use. It's located appropriately, and I don't think it will have the kind of impacts on the neighborhood that are being discussed. I have sympathy for them because of covenants and so forth. Probably one day they may all want to, or many of them may want to do the same for a family member. I think it's important that we be allowed to do that. I think it's important that they look attractive. And we put some provisions in the zoning bylaw that would make sure it's limited in size. It's back where it's proposed to be situated. It's not impacting the water and septic, and it's not on the trees in the hill and so forth. So I believe it would be good planning to allow this proposed use. and recommend council consider adopting both bylaws to move this forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. So to be clear, the first motion we're going to deal with is to allow or to receive the report on the Granny Flat. Any questions on that? Barb?
Thank you, Mayor Milne. Just a clarification through you to Bill. My understanding was back in the last term of council, council of the day allowed secondary suites in rural and agricultural areas. So this isn't unusual, as you said, Bill. It's something that we have permitted on other properties that are not serviced by municipal water or wastewater. The other question was the size of the property. Would it have, excluding the triangle that is being rezoned and added to the property, would the property have been large enough to accommodate a granny suite without that additional triangle?
If I may, through Mayor Milne, answer
Yep.
The second question first. Yes, I believe so. It would be large enough without that triangle. And to agree with you that in the A1 zone for larger farm parcels, or even I believe a lot created in a rural zone, you do allow that. But the rural the residential 6 zone is more of a rural housing zone, estate type residential. So it didn't specifically allow that there, but you did put that in it is defined in the zoning bylaw, and it is quite specifically permitted and encouraged in the official plan. So,
Thank you.
and as I don't want to repeat myself, but the changes the province is making and the encouragements in the new planning statement all will be encouraging this even more, probably without the 20-year limit. Just to add one thing, there was concern about Airbnb and that kind of thing, and I have a lot of sympathy for that concern. I don't know whether council has looked at short versus long-term occupancies, or whether you want to open that can of worms up, but I believe that's totally different than this initiative. But if you ever did want to look at that, that would be something that a separate report could come on.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? Jason?
Just to touch on that, that's one of my concerns. I mean, I'm all for property owners having their right to build another spot on there, but you get into an area like that, you start renting it out. Is there any way we can control that, making it for a family member? Like, you start putting rental units like that behind every house. I don't know. That's a bit sketchy. And you touched on the up to 20 years. I kind of wonder why that's even in there. Or like, we're not going to go in and rip it down in 20 years, are we? So why is it even? Is that why you're saying it's going to come out of the policy?
Bill?
If I may, through the mayor, that it probably it will be up to council whether they wish to take the 20 years out of the policy, and you would, before you can do that, you would have to have a public meeting, and so you could hear from the public on that issue. You can regulate the length of stay. In my opinion, a number of communities have wrestled with that issue. In this one, they've stated that it's for their parents or a parent. So I think that is suffice for me to do that. If short-term occupancies started to crop up in places that you weren't happy with, or this one in the future, then I think you would want to try and enforce the zoning bylaw as written. Yeah, I don't see it as being an issue in this particular case. I think if you wanted to wrestle with that issue, we would have to look at that separately, but it is a valid concern, although it doesn't seem like people have the money to do a lot of traveling these days, but it's still an issue.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Monica?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just through you, Chair. To Bill, just more of a comment. I can certainly understand the sentiments with regards to keeping things, as per quo. And I appreciate Councillor Rice's question in there because that was actually one of mine. To how will we ensure that it will remain what is set out in purpose to do? So with that being said, in my mind, I almost am looking at this as kind of a pilot. It's not a pilot project, but it's kind of testing it right now. And in these day and age, we do need creative solutions. So if it's something that will work and that can help to keep the seniors in the home, I am looking more to support that. So I understand, I read the documents and I do understand the concerns that the, community has. However, we are in unprecedented times. And I know it's a over buzzword sometimes, but it truly is. And if there's a way to have a creative solution to keep people in their home and to have the proper enforcement and regulation and supervision of those, of this move, then I don't see that there should be too much hesitation in that.
Thank you, Monica. Any other questions? Jason, go ahead. Oh, Joan, I'll take you next, Joan.
Just to that, is there something we could put in that, like, to me, I understand it and I'm not, and I'm for it, but if every house in that subdivision wants to put one in and they're all rental housing, is there something we can put in there that they can't be a rental house? I don't know. I'm just a bit uncomfortable with if it does set a precedence that way. I'm not sure.
Bill?
If I may, through the mayor, I would recommend that when we bring that additional residential unit report out, that we can be very specific in the wording there for these sites. Everyone else, as of right now, still has to apply for a zoning change, so we know what this applicant has in mind. When we get into as of right, so everyone is allowed to do it, I think we can be much more specific. We probably wouldn't even call them garden suites. We'd probably call them something else, but yeah, we can write it then so it's not a short-term accommodation. And so when that report comes forward, you will see wording in there that addresses that issue. And so once it's allowed as of right, without, they still need building permit and all that, but once it's allowed as of right, the regulation or the wording of the zoning bylaw will be much more specific and, in my view, prohibit short-term rental use.
Okay. Joan?
Thank you, Mayor Mill, and thank you, Mr. White, because that was something I was going to talk about, because I know, is it garden flat or granny flat? Because granny flats are not intended as permanent addition, but they are designed to be easily removed, and they can be removed or replaced when they're no longer needed. So I think that is some of the concerns of the other residents, and that was something that but you just clarify as to what you will be doing. I'm hoping that it will be a permanent resident and not something that is going to be removed or to change the face of the community and something like that. So thanks for that response. That was going to be my major question. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Any other questions? Monica?
Just a clarification question through you, Chair, to Bill. Just regarding parking, I seen the images in there, but can you just, for the benefit of the public, just remind the parking situation with that? There's like how many parking spaces there are, and if they were to get more vehicles, how that would look.
Well, if I may, through the mayor, there's appears to be a 2-car garage there. I mean, I don't know if there's material in the garage or not. Some of us would tend to do that, but you can certainly park in front, in my view, from the looks of the drawing, and then all along that driveway. But so I don't see parking as an issue in any home. Mom may have 1 car, but you could have a couple and 5 teenagers, so you could have 5 cars in a home without a granny suite or a garden suite. So I think this adequately addresses and meets your parking requirements, and I don't think it's going to be a hardship. But the provisions in the Planning Act will be 1 space per unit for these suites that are going to be allowed in every urban service residential area. And actually the province passed a regulation to make sure that municipalities didn't require more than one space per unit. And also some other provisions on the floor area of the unit, so forth. So that I will admit that doesn't apply in rural areas where there's no water and sewer, but one space per unit is available. There's lots of parking on the site on the gravel driveway. And if it became an issue and there's material in the 2-car garage, then we could enforce the bylaw and require that material to be removed to make sure the 2 spaces are there.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. So I need a mover and seconder to deal with the rezoning of the triangle piece. Barb and Martin, thank you. Bill, anything further to add on that one?
No, Mayor Millen.
All right. Any questions regarding the rezoning of the triangle? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the bylaws for each of those 2 issues. The first is the bylaw regarding the granny suite. Would someone care to move that, please? Martin and Jim. Thank you. Any question or anything further to add, Bill?
No, Mayor Millen.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. The second bylaw is regarding the triangle parcel of land, the rezoning of that. I need a mover and seconder first. Joan, you all right with that? Yep, she'll move that. Jason will second. Anything to add, Bill?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate you coming to the meeting in a stressful situation. Give our regards to your good wife.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Okay. Do we want to finish the planning section, Madam Clerk, or go back? Go back. Okay. We'll go back now to the delegations and presentations. Oh, sorry. I missed the declaration of pecuniary interest. Anybody have any to declare? Barb?
Through you, I will be declaring a conflict with regard to closed session item 14.1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. On the advice of the Integrity Commissioner in the past, I am declaring an interest respecting the above closed session matter, as the lands adjacent to my home have a nexus with the subject matter. I will not participate in any council discussions or vote on this matter.
Very good. Thank you. Jason?
I'll declare one on 8.2.1, the land purchase pecuniary interest.
All right, thank you. And I also will declare one on report number 8.2.3, the road and renaming report. Okay. No further declares? Declarations? Declares, is that a word? Probably not.
Is now.
It is now. Let the minutes reflect. All right, moving on to the delegations and presentations. We do have a delegation here this morning. I believe we have Martin Strathoff. There we go. Martin Strathoff from the Ontario Farmland Trust. Welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And thank you everybody for having me today. Am I coming through okay on this? Excellent. So my name is Martin Strathoff. I'm the Executive Director of the Ontario Farmland Trust. And the Ontario Farmland Trust, what we are, first and foremost, we are a land trust. So we are a recognized conservation organization. But what's very unique about our organization is that we focus on the conservation, protection, and preservation of farmland specifically. And we're the only land trust in the province to do such a thing. We do that using conservation easement agreements, as well as we are able to receive donations of farmland. Through both of those mechanisms, landowners are also able to receive a charitable tax receipt because we are a charitable nonprofit. The other area of activity that we constantly engage in is policy advocacy for better policy to protect farmland, as well as community engagement, education, presentations, events, and whatnot. So one of the things that is really important about the work that we do is recognizing that Ontario's farmland is limited, it's finite, and it provides a lot more services than just food production, which is obviously, of course, where our mind first goes to when we're thinking about farmland. But it's also a critical factor in our economic development, particularly in rural communities. Ontario-wide, the agri-food sector contributes 47 billion to Ontario's GDP and employs 1 in 10 Ontarians. So it's a significant factor. Farmland also provides very important eco-services, such as water retention to help mitigate floods, as well as a tool for carbon sequestration. So these are increasing conversations that we're having in the public discourse, particularly with climate change. And then there's also a range of social and cultural benefits that farmland also has to offer. And despite how important and all of the services that farmland provides to us, as a province, we're losing farmland at a rate of 319 acres per day. That's an unsustainable rate of farmland loss when we think about the 11.8 million acres that we have as farmland in this province today. At that rate, we would be out of farmland in this province within 100 years. That's a very scary thought. I don't actually think that we're going to be out of farmland in 100 years, so I'm not trying to be alarmist. Well, maybe a little bit, because that is it is absolutely unsustainable. And some of the issues that we're seeing with farmland right now, one, there is a general lack of knowledge around agriculture in our land use planning. Many of our planners actually come from more of an urban background. We have researchers at the University of Guelph who've backed this up with engagement that they've done with municipalities. We also have significant land use competing pressures for land uses. We know that we have an affordability and availability housing crisis on our hands, and there's also significant demand for aggregate extraction. And of course, there's also a lot of environmental restoration that's also taking place, that is also taking farmland out of production, but also, of course, providing healthy returns. We also are seeing increasing land prices and the increase of cost of other inputs. In 2021, farmland in Ontario rose on average by 22%, another 19% in 2022, and another 11% on top of that. So that's year over year. So I think in those going from 2021 to today, we've seen about a 51% increase in the average price of farmland. That's creating a very challenging environment for new and young farmers to be able to get into agriculture. And when we think about the aging demographics, 40% of farmers are set to retire within the next 10 years, and 66% do not have a succession plan in place. This is incredibly scary when we think about the succession and ongoing management of our agri-food system in this province. And of course, with the consolidation of farmland, we are seeing larger and larger farmers and fewer farmers. And, you know, I tend to think, you know, what 25 or 35-year-olds, which is what I am, could afford a multi-million-dollar farm with that many acres. A lot of people who are trying to get into agriculture are actually looking for smaller scale operations to start off with. So there's a lot of issues when we're thinking about the long-term viability of our local food system. There are several tools that we have available to us to be able to protect our land. One, we see federal or provincial parks. A good example of that in Ontario is the Rouge Urban National Park. Interesting that it's considered an urban park when it's primarily made up of Class 1 farmland. We also see provincial policies and plans, so example, the Greenbelt Plan. And of course, municipal official plans have a significant role to play in making sure that we're properly identifying and protecting farmland for its agricultural viability. But one that's often not really well known about at the municipal level are land trusts. And so land trusts, as I said, we're able to hold conservation easement agreements, and the legislation that gives us the authority to do that is the Conservation Land Act. And what's primarily of importance to the Ontario Farmland Trust is, you can't really tell that it's bolded, but Section D that recognizes that a landowner can enter into an easement agreement with a conservation body for the conservation, preservation, or protection of the land for agricultural purposes. This was added in 2005, the year after OFT opened our doors. And since that time, we've worked with 26 landowners to put conservation easement agreements on the title of their property, totaling over 2,700 acres. And that land is now protected in perpetuity because conservation easement agreements go on the title of the property itself. And so once the property changes hands, future landowners are still bound by the requirement to maintain that within agriculture, meaning that they can still farm, do whatever kind of agriculture that they want, but we're seeing things such as the prevention of subdivision development, aggregate extraction, or other non-agricultural uses on these types of properties. So our easements, they are individually negotiated with every landowner. So there can be a type of easement where all the permissions and restrictions that go into the agreement can apply to the entirety of the property. Or you can see, like what we have on the screen here, an example where our easements can actually have different sections of the property where different permissions and restrictions can apply. So for instance, a farmstead area, which could allow for additional non-agricultural uses, as well as direct things such as on-farm diversified uses and agritourism uses to that particular area. Agricultural area, pretty straightforward. If it's an agricultural use, you're good to go. And then we can also create restrictions for forested and natural areas. So a lot of landowners like to do that in the instance where they have a significant forested area or wetlands that they want protected in perpetuity. And that's really important for the Farmland Trust as well, because we recognize that protecting these types of ecological features contribute to creating the environment that's needed to produce healthy food. There's quite a bit that can be involved. I'm not going to get into all of the details on what goes into a conservation easement agreement. But one of the things that is often, I'd say probably two motivating factors for landowners to do this. One is protecting farmland as a legacy piece for future generations to make sure that this vital farmland is available for those generations to be able to produce food for our communities. And not just our immediate communities, but our province, our country, and of course, internationally as well, because Canada is one of the few net exporters of food. I had mentioned that we've worked on now 26 properties. We have 8 more in the works right now, and we just released a new strategic plan that actually is looking to complete 40 new easements within the next 5 years. So we're going to continue our land protection initiatives using easements. This year, we also received our first donation of farmland, and that is creating significant opportunity for the Farmland Trust. We've gone back and looked at 2 decades now worth of reports around some of the challenges that new and young farmers and those who have faced systemic barriers to get into agriculture, looking for land access programs. Now that the Ontario Farmland Trust has a property, we've been doing work to prepare ourselves for the development of a land access program. Because it was donated, we've removed the financialization of that property, and we're able to provide affordable and alternative pathways for these new and young and equity-seeking groups to be able to access farmland and find these pathways into food production. The other area that's really of importance that I'm going to talk a little bit more about for the context of this presentation is local agricultural preserves. One of the things with conservation easement agreements is that we've been working one-on-one with landowners, and that's really great when we're able to help support their conservation objectives. But we also know that we're working outside of the traditional planning framework. And we are really interested in making sure that we start partnering with municipalities to be able to identify areas of priority for them to say, this is farmland that we as a municipality want to make sure that we protect in perpetuity. And while I said municipal official plans have a role to play in that, we also know that policy can change quite rapidly. And when we're talking about the long-term protection of agriculture, we are talking about our easements are in place for 999 years. This is land that we can't, once it's gone, it's gone. We can't return it back to agriculture. A final element back to our education and community engagement piece is that we get a lot of requests from both community members, grassroots organizations, planning staff that don't have the agricultural background, as well as municipal councillors to come to us for resources and knowledge. And so what we're now working on is the development of a farmland protection resource center for these different stakeholders to be able to acquire the types of knowledge and information that they need to make better decisions at the municipal level to be able to protect farmland. We're actually looking at the American Farmland Trust Farmland Information Center as a model for us to consider with specific content for here in Ontario. The idea, though, that I want to focus on for the ag preserve concept, really, as I say here, a collaborative, multi-stakeholder approach to create local farm preserves. What does that mean? Well, again, that's looking at both the farmland trust, the landowner, and the municipality, and the broader community working together to be able to identify areas of critical concern that they want to be able to make sure that this farmland is protected and not threatened for the future. And where this could play a really critical role is with areas for municipalities that have an interest in protecting perhaps what they might consider a specialty crop area, but that hasn't been approved by the province yet. While we have specialty crops identified within the provincial planning statement, we also know that there's only 4 specialty crop areas identified across Ontario. Ontario also is home to just over 50% of Canada's Class 1 soil, which is the best soil that we have to be able to produce food. And all of the majority of that is located in southwestern Ontario. And so if we're able to identify those areas that are of critical importance to maintain the viability of local agri-food systems, we can make sure that we protect those in the long term. I might not get too much into this detail because I don't want to take up too much time, but really driving home the fact that these are community-driven initiatives that has community participation, as well as, of course, the landowners, is providing the agricultural protection. We're able to protect natural features, and then we incorporate the social benefits. It does incorporate the notion of an agricultural system approach, so recognizing the importance of agri-food businesses to be incorporated into local preserves, as well as being able to provide opportunities for agritourism, community engagement, education, and demonstration and research plots as well. So it's not just that what we're trying to do is freeze agriculture as it is today and saying nothing else can change. We very much are an agricultural organization and recognize how much agriculture has changed in the last 50 years. And when I say that we're protecting farmland for 999 years, we need to be able to allow for that level of flexibility to see agricultural change into the future. So just a kind of quick concept behind this is that this light green area, if we see that as designated agricultural land, the area within the black circle, this would be something that would be a specified policy area, could be identified by municipal official plans. And that's kind of the concept of where the agricultural preserve would go. However, what's another critical fact is that OFT would work with the landowners to put conservation easement agreements on several of the properties. It doesn't need to be all of them, but just enough in the event that if policy were to ever change and that level of protection of the official plan goes, there's enough easements in place. It's almost like a belt and suspenders approach to being able to protect this farmland. And so hopefully that doesn't happen and we still see the policies wanting to protect that farmland. But that's one of the approaches that we're saying, both taking the strengths of what policy can do to protect a large area of agriculture at one time and marrying that with the strength of conservation easement agreements, which are the strongest tool that we have to protect farmland in this province. Where we're at right now at the Farmland Trust, we've completed a research project. We've worked with faculty at the University of Guelph in the Rural Planning Department to sort of formulate how we can proceed with this type of a concept. And so right now we're in the stage of developing our own internal approach and methodology to be able to work with municipalities. The next stage of that would be actually to develop that toolkit for both municipalities and other land trusts to be able to do this work, because we don't want to do this alone. We want to empower as many people as we can to do this. And then, of course, getting into the execution and the implementation of this. One of the things that I think is, can't remember what's on the next slide. What's really important right now for the Farmland Trust, as I mentioned, we're a charitable nonprofit. We rely quite heavily on donations and grants to be able to do the work that we're doing. And so right now we've been in discussions with several granting organizations and foundations that are very interested in this work, but also just want to make sure that there's municipalities out there that have this level of interest and passion and dedication to protecting this vital resource. And so we're talking to different municipalities that have had an interest or have reached out to us to try and share this message about the work that we can do together, and seeking letters of support just from a concept stage. So we're able to go back to funders to say, if we put in all of this work, there is a level of interest out there from groups. It's not committing you to anything, but it's at least just sharing that this is something that is important to our municipalities. I'll wrap up there and happy to take any questions, Mayor Milne.
Thank you very much, Martin. As a farmer myself, I appreciate the efforts of your organization to promote agriculture to the broader community.
Thank you.
Any questions for Martin? Martin,
Thank you.
I know you spell your names the same way. That's good.
Yes, 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 I'm not Welsh. Good to see you again, Martin.
Good to see you.
You mentioned this is a really good thing for succession for smaller farmers or even big farmers. So is that something that you really put forth?
Yeah, so this has been actually a tool that several of the farmers that we've worked with used in terms of succession planning, and they've each gone about it for different reasons. For example, one farmer was very much interested in pretty much handing off the farm at a very reduced rate to their next of kin, but was also concerned about, well, if I give it to them at such a reduced rate, I don't want them to turn around and sell it and make this massive profit to a developer. That's not the intent of me giving it to them at this discounted rate. So that has protected the interest of the landowner to say, this is why I'm engaging in this ability to transfer this property to the next generation at an affordable rate, which helps that next generation get on their feet. The other piece that was important in that landowner's decision was that what's essentially happening with an easement going on title is that the landowner is donating conservation interests to the farmland trust. And those interests have public value. And so CRA recognizes that we're able to provide a charitable tax receipt for the appraised value of the conservation interests. I'm trying to simplify this as much because appraisals can be very challenging in this way, but they then get a charitable tax receipt for that they also use to offset some of the reduced price that they had given to transfer the property to the new and younger landowner. So,
Go ahead.
And you mentioned it was good news that you've got 8 more people looking into it. And so how is you said you have a strategic plan. How are you setting it up? Like, you mentioned green belt policies. Do you want to have, instead of having a farm here, farm here, farm here, do you want to try and get your own farmland protection belt? Because you did mention that Southern Ontario is the best soil in the world, actually, and it's getting paved over. So
yeah,
is that your idea?
So, I mean, one, we definitely advocate for the contiguous agricultural land base. And ideally, we would be creating that sort of a cluster effect of protected properties so that in the event that either aggregate extraction or urban boundary expansion spills over onto one of these protected properties, that it's not abandoned or it's not, isolated all on its own. What's really interesting about what we've been seeing in the realm of urban agriculture right now, which has also recently been added to the provincial planning statement, is that these types of land are still a community asset within urban boundaries. However, we still want to make sure that the agricultural system itself, the connectivity of it all, is protected. And so in our first 20 years, we've been working with landowners as they've come to us. It was started off as a few properties here and there throughout the province. We now have about 50 landowners who are interested in working with us. We have these 8 that we're working on right now. There's a number of factors that influence when we have selected a property as our priority, because we are limited in staff and resources to be able to complete a certain number each year. And certainly creating that kind of cluster and contiguous protected areas is certainly a part of that strategy. And that agricultural land preserve concept is integrated into that as well.
Very good. Well, thank you, Martin. Certainly appreciate your time today. A very interesting presentation, and best of luck in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
End on one final note?
Absolutely.
The Ontario Farmland Trust is here as a resource for Southgate Council. So if you guys ever have any questions or need any support of any kind, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Will do.
We're always very happy to be there as a resource.
Excellent. Thank you,
Great.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well.
I see it's 10:15. Why don't we take
We just need a mover.
do we need a mover and seconder to receive the report or the delegation? Monica and Jim. All those in favor? That is carried. All right. Let's take a 10-minute recess, and we'll reconvene at about 25 after. 1 minute warning. Passed right on the nose. So we'll bring the meeting back to order. Our second delegation today is from KPMG, the audit 2022 audit findings report. If I could have a mover to receive that. Monica, seconded by Joan. Thank you very much. Taylor, perhaps you'd like to begin things.
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I just wanted to point out an error that was in my staff report. It noted that the annual surplus for 2022 was 7.292 million. That was from a previous draft that we had gone through, but the final annual surplus in the report attached is 7.809 million. Also, something to note before Brendan gets into his audit findings is that these financial statements are drafted PSAB. They're not fund basis, so there are significant differences. As you'll see, we have an annual surplus, whereas fund basis would be nil. And that's mostly everything I wanted to say. If there are questions regarding the statements or Brendan's delegation, if they can be asked during his delegation while he's here, just so we can have the backup, that would be ideal.
Thank you, Taylor. And Brendan, welcome.
Perfect.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. You guys can hear me? Pull that closer. All right. How about that? Better? All right. I'm not used to kind of this setup here. I feel like Beyonce or something at a concert. So thank you, Taylor, for the introduction. My name is Brendan Hall. I'm a partner with KPMG in our Kitchener-Waterloo office. Matthew couldn't be here today, but Matthew is the lead audit engagement partner for this file this year. But what I'm here to do today is walk through our audit findings report for the December 31st, 2002 fiscal year for the Township of Southgate. Some beautiful mugshots there for you. We'll walk through a summary of our report. So at this point, we're really 99% done our audit engagement. There are a few administrative matters that are common to be outstanding at this stage. So we are required to communicate with the township's lawyers to ensure if there's any legal cases that would result in likely an outflow. Those are accrued for within the statements. We do have one law firm that we're continuing to follow up with. We expect to get a response back in the next few days, which would put us in a position to be able to issue the final audited financial statements upon receipt of what we refer to as the management representation letter. Our materiality was $300,000 this year, and I'll walk through in a few slides how that materiality level was selected. We don't have for 2022 any significant new accounting policies, but you're probably well aware that there are some accounting policy changes coming forward in the next year for Southgate, for any municipality in Ontario. And so we'll touch on those as well. But asset retirement obligations and financial instruments are some buzzwords that you may or may not have heard. But when we work through the 2023 audit, those will be some topics that will result in some changes in the format and presentation of the financial statements for next year. So just to kind of have that on your radar. So we've talked about the status. I'm not going to walk through any more details of that. Materiality is a concept that is set for every audit engagement that's performed. And really what the concept is there is that our audit is done and performed to ensure that we gather sufficient evidence to ensure that the financial statements are not materially misstated. And so materiality is a representative number. So on an organization that's much smaller than yours, materiality would be much lower. On an organization that's much larger than yours, it would be a larger number. It's typically based on revenues, a percent of revenues, or a percent of assets. If you were a profit focused entity, it would be based on profit. But common practice for municipalities is we base that materiality level in and around 2 to 2.5% of revenues. So here, this slide kind of walks through some of the numerics. But again, when we were at the planning stage of the audit, we were looking at last year's figures. Again, kind of 14.5 round numbers PSAB revenue. And so we landed at a materiality level of $300,000. I'd mentioned 2 to 2.5% kind of commonplace in the municipal sector for materiality. We're on the lower range there, really, because it's our first year working with the organization. As we get, continue to build our understanding of the operations, understanding of the accounting and finance function, we could see that materiality level coming up a little bit. But again, just to provide a little bit of context on why we're closer to the bottom range there than the upper range. In all audits in Canada, we're required to consider significant risks. This is not an indication that I think this is a heightened risk at this organization. It's just when you're doing an audit in Canada, you have to assume that management is in a position that they could override financial figures in the financial statements. And there's some required responses that as the auditor we have to perform. And typically that's addressed through what we refer to as some journal entry testing. So we have some digital tools that will work through certain journal entries that are made throughout the year, and it looks for unique or unusual patterns that wouldn't be commonplace in a financial entry. And we did not find any issues in the performance of this procedure. So that's small font for me, so I'm going from memory here, or I'll refer to my notes. We're now going to walk through really what I would call our areas of audit focus. It's just to provide some kind of context on the work performed over some of the more material or large captions of your financial statements and any of the topics or differences that we found as a result of our testing. Of course, for any municipality, taxation revenue, a significant portion of the revenue that the township generates. We obtain the MPAC assessments, which are our third party. We obtain the bylaw enacted tax rates, and we perform analytical procedures to ensure that what we're seeing realized as taxation revenue is consistent with what would be expected. So for the 2022 tax revenue testing that we did, we had identified that upper tier and school board tax levies hadn't been set up as a payable. So they had been collected, the cash had been received, so debit cash in my accounting world. Credit had been made to revenue. Credit should have been to payables because those are remitted onto those upper tier and school board entities. And so this would have caught up to the organization in 2023 because the amounts were remitted up. But what it was resulting in our initial general ledger that we obtained was an increased tax revenue that had to be corrected for to get to these statements that we have today. Developer charges and development charges are a significant portion of deferred revenue. Deferred revenue, is an accounting topic that basically says you've got the money early and there's restrictions on how you spend it. So development charges is the biggest piece of that. And we do a number of audit procedures on the various directions that DC account moves. So we test the collections of DCs to ensure they're consistent with amounts received and the agreements that are in place. We also do testing going the other way, ensuring that what is coming out of DC, the deferred revenue balance and being realized in revenue is supported by eligible spending per the DC studies. We didn't identify any differences with the development charges being the biggest piece of deferred revenue, but what we do have, which is common across other municipalities that I audit, is there were some concepts of prepaid taxes that were showing as a negative receivable. And so for accounting standards, if that is a prepayment, that should be in deferred revenue. So we had a reclass of $30,000 or $31,000, no P&L impact, no impact on surplus, but really a presentation issue that we're required to think about. We go to the next slide, grant revenue. The township generated close to $2 million in grant revenue for fiscal 2022. Our engagement team performed sampling on those grant revenues to ensure that amounts that are realized as revenue were supported by cash that was collected, and that there were no stipulations remaining to be performed with respect to those grants that the township had recorded as revenue. We did identify a $31,000 difference here with respect to something that had been set up as a receivable and revenue in 2021. And when cash was received in 2022, there was another entry to debit cash and credit revenue when it should have been debit cash and reduce the receivable because it had already been accrued in the previous year. So that correcting entry has been reflected in these financial statements. Long-term liabilities or debt, as we often kind of commonly refer to it, we confirm with the township's institutions that hold those debt balances to ensure that the amounts that are recorded by Southgate are accurate. We did not identify any differences. We maintain custody of the receipt and mailing of those, so direct communication between us and the financial institutions. No differences were identified. Cash, relatively straightforward kind of element of the financial statements, but a very large number. So the township has over $22 million of cash as at December 31st, 2022. We confirm again, directly maintaining the custody and the receipt of that confirmation process with the financial institutions that hold your cash to ensure that the amounts that are recorded by Southgate in the financial statements are accurate. No issues noted in this regard. Accounts payable and liabilities. This is an area of the audit where we're really focused on completeness. So you don't typically find differences or errors in liabilities that don't exist. Like you don't usually find liabilities in the general ledger that don't exist. Completeness is really a risk. So it's what's not been recorded there. What liabilities possibly have not been reflected as at December 31st that should have been reflected at December 31st. So we perform what's referred to as the search for unrecorded liabilities, where we actually are looking at transactions post year end. So payments that the township's making after December 31st, i.e. January, February, March of 2023, looking at invoices that are coming in the door, January, February, March, 2023, to ensure if those pertain to services that were rendered in 2022, they've been appropriately accrued for. And we did not identify any differences in the performance of our procedures.
Brendan, I have a question here. Barb.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the cash portfolio there.
Yep.
Can you inform us, does that include our reserves? Is that when you say cash, we're not sitting there with a mattress full of, dollar bills, but what makes up that cash value? Thank you.
Yeah. So through you, Mayor, or to you, Mayor, I don't find, it would deal with, a large portion of that cash. I think you have to look at your deferred revenue balance and your DC charges. So on your financial statements, you have some pretty sizable deferred revenue and DC balances. So in terms of the comment of, are you sitting on a mattress full of cash? I think when you look at your liabilities section, a lot of that cash is earmarked for certain initiatives, or put in another way, there are stipulations in how you will be required to utilize that cash.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So tangible capital assets, and appreciate that Taylor provided a little bit of context too here in terms of, the PSAB, which are the accounting rules of your external statements versus how a municipal entity budgets. For PSAB statements, anything that is capital, long-term benefit, providing the organization with value over multiple periods is capitalized. So trucks, roads, bridges, buildings, those are all things that are set up on your PSAB financial statements as an asset, and they are depreciated over their estimated useful life. And the concept there is it gets expensed over its useful life. And so tangible capital assets is a very large number, and it is for any municipality, almost $60 million for the township. And we look at that from a continuity basis. So there's movement in that count. I think of it like a bathtub. So stuff comes in, water's coming in, and amortization is the concept that is kind of lowering the level in that bathtub. So we perform work on the additions. So anything that the township is capitalizing, we run what's referred to as a statistical sample. Of course, we're not looking at every single edition during the year, but based on materiality, we're sampling items, agreeing that back to invoice and third-party supporting documentation, and then making an assessment too as to whether that's capital or not. So there's a risk that an organization could capitalize maintenance type things. Those shouldn't be capitalized. Those are expensed. We didn't identify any differences as a result of our additions testing or in the performance of our amortization expense testing.
Question on that one. Is there a dollar threshold, so to speak, where we determine whether it's going to be capitalized or expensed?
So that would probably be a question more
Sure.
towards staff first.
Taylor, please.
Yes, we do have a matrix per our purchasing policy. I'm kind of blanking on what the dollar value is. I think it's around 5,000. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, so and that makes sense again from the organization's
100%.
size and scope. Like the value of spreading $5,000 over 5 years is kind of trivial when we think back to that materiality concept.
Thank you.
So we have some schedules here, which we're required to communicate to the group here of uncorrected misstatements and corrected misstatements. So we have an uncorrected entry, which you would never correct for as it relates to an entry that was identified by the previous year accounting firm or audit firm that management corrected for in 2022. So it's a timing difference, but you would never go back and restate for such a nominal amount. We are required to assess that there is noise in the 2022 P&L to get the balance sheet or statement of financial position correct, but it would not be something that we would expect to see the entity correct for. And it was nominal. I'm going from memory, but about $30,000. Our other financial reporting matters. So, we've assessed the disclosures in the statements. We believe that they're appropriate. They're materially accurate. We don't have any significant accounting policies for 2022. That's going to be a very different discussion for 2023 in terms of asset retirement obligations and financial instruments. And happy to talk about that if the group has questions. But really we don't have any new accounting standards this year that drove any significant incremental effort than what would have occurred in a previous year in terms of the accounting standards. So in terms of specific topics, we're required to kind of go through this list and just assess if there's anything that we want to draw attention to this group. The only thing that we really feel is, had any element of relevance is just in terms of, we worked with 3 treasurers through this period, and this probably is not news or shock to this group, but there was turnover in the finance department. So we were engaged through an RFP process. We worked with Mr. Gott initially at some of the interim and planning stages of our audits. At a point in time, he left the organization. As a new treasurer came on, Adam needed time to get up to speed, understand the accounts, the records. So there's definitely some start, stop. We're not usually midway through 2024 doing an audit findings report for December 31st, 2022. But just to provide some context there and why we're here when we are here now, we received full cooperation, but we did have to work with management's schedule and effectively kind of turn the tap on, turn the tap off, turn the tap on, turn the tap off, turn the tap on, turn the tap off. We did have continuity with Akash throughout the process, which was helpful. But we do acknowledge, right, that with the main treasurers kind of coming and going, that definitely slowed us down for the current year, and hopefully that's not something we're dealing with kind of moving forward. We are required to comment on our independence. So KPMG does not perform any other work currently for the township of Southgate, which means we're absolutely independent. We have to be independent to issue an audit opinion. The only item that incremental service, which has not occurred as of yet, but that the township has sought our assistance for, is just support in compiling the FIR, which is really data driven. It's putting information together for one of your required filings for ministry purposes. And so that's outside the scope of the audit, but that's something that Matthew will be supporting the organization with. It does not impair our independence. So I'm not going to go through any of the kind of appendices. I think they're there if you'd like to read them. I think, from the accounting standards point of view, I think, as long as you're fully aware that ARO is coming down the pipes and financial instruments, that would be the only thing that I could see possibly, getting into a little bit if this group desired.
Thank you, sir. And I do appreciate your patience as we work through some staffing challenges for sure. But I'm sure we're on the straight and narrow now. And if we need to get the Batmobile out of the cave, we'll do that. Any questions for Brendan? Monica?
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Kevin or Brian.
Brendan today. Yeah.
Brendan today, sorry about that.
Kevin, if the question gets tough.
Well, let's see if it gets tough now. But I was just going to say it was just welcome from Waterloo. That's where I graduated. And when you mentioned KBMG, it's a very prominent organization in that area, especially with the co-op students and math students. So welcome. And thank you for the memory. Just with regards to revenue and deferred revenue, can you provide more details on the specific projects or development that have led to the increase in deferred revenue and how the township plans to utilize the deferred revenue in upcoming years? I'm not sure if that's for you or for treasurer.
That'd be more for treasury.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, so
Kevin to Kevin.
just to confirm, the question was why there's that increase and how we plan to use it. So the increase is primarily driven through collections of development charges, which is the major portion of our deferred revenues. Regarding how we plan to use it, there are projects that are outlined in our development charges background study. And so as and when the timelines for those projects are met and the thresholds for those projects are met, we would bring forward those projects through the budget process. And that's how we would use those deferred revenues.
Okay. That's good.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time today and enjoy the rest of the day.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Cash. All righty. Well, yeah, hope so.
Almost time to start next year.
Right. Exactly. All things in time. Barb?
Just through you, just one quick question through you to staff, or what is the outlook for completing 2023 audit?
That's something that we have to discuss with KPMG on what's going to be an ideal timeline. There are some things that we still have to clean up for 23 before we're prepared to go into the audit. The main thing being the ARO obligation. We are working towards that and working with department heads to sort that out. It will be a significant process, as Brendan has alluded to. Sorry, but hopefully we can get to it as soon as possible.
Yeah, so we from an independent standpoint and just process and risk, we couldn't start 2023 until 2022 is done. So our plan would really be, and again, it depends on management's as they work through some of the required elements. But to give some context, right? Like some municipalities are months behind their kind of standard timelines based on this ARO. Like some organizations have been working a year already on getting. Like ARO is huge. Any asset that you own, you have to make an assessment as to whether or not there's any legal obligation to restore that asset or deal with a legal requirement associated with that. And so for municipalities, primarily buildings, I'm generalizing it, but basically you have to go through all buildings, and municipalities don't tend to have one or two of them. You got 30 or 40, and you have to go through an assessment to understand, what's there, when was it built. I'm generalizing here, but basically was it built in a period where asbestos was used? If asbestos was used, there's a requirement to model what that cost will be to remedy it. Fuel tanks is the other area we're seeing, landfills, the third. So it's not a nominal undertaking. So that's going to impact really the timing of when we would start 2023 just to be efficient. But that's probably either later in the summer or the fall or the winter, depending on management's preference. We haven't locked in dates yet.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on. Next is adoption of the minutes of the May 15th special council and closed session meetings as presented, and we approve those minutes. Someone, Barb, do you move that? Thank you. Seconder, Jason. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Back to Taylor. I see we have 1, 2, 3, maybe a number of reports from Taylor here this morning. The first is the 2022 financial report. Someone care to move that, please? Monica, thank you. Seconded by Joan. Thank you. Taylor.
All good. Yeah, obviously I tried to squeeze in as much as I can here. In this, maybe my final council meeting, hopefully not, but yeah, so this first
Hope
one.
not.
I guess hope so. So the first one is just in regards to the financial statements as presented, and if council will approve them, and then.
Okay, are there any questions from council on that financial statement report? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is carried. Next one is the annual treasurer's statement on development charges for 2022 and 2023. Moved by Barb, seconded by Monica. Thank you. Taylor or Cash. So you get your mic
Thank you, Your
on.
Worship. Through you to council. This is an annual requirement from the treasurer. We're supposed to make this report available to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs at the request. It's supposed to be publicly available on our website. It was something that was missed in 22. So at this point, we've brought forward the 2022 statement as well as the 2023 statement. The purpose of it is to summarize the activity within our DC accounts per segment of the development charges background study. If there's any questions regarding either of those statements, I'm happy to answer them. Other than that, the report is pretty straightforward.
Very good. Thank you, Cash. Any questions? Monica.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you to Deputy Treasurer. Just had a quick question with regards to the decrease in development charge collections. It is noticeable that there's a significant decrease from 2022 to 2023. If you could just provide, just for the benefit of the public, insights into the factors that contributed to the decline.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Singsors. It is basically driven by any building activity, any new building activity within the township. So if there has been fewer building permits that would have been DC eligible, that is the biggest driver. And in fact, I would hazard the only driver. Our DC rates themselves per unit have increased. There was 2 factors to that increase. The first one being, sorry, correct myself, I'm thinking 2024. So yeah, no, the primary driver was fewer eligible building permits.
Dina, do you want to add something there, please?
Yes, please, Your Worship. Just to add to Kesh's comment, 2022 saw a new development charges bylaw, which actually decreased the development charge revenue significantly. And then the effect of Bill 163 in 2023, we would have had 85% of those revenues collected, which affected the municipality to the tune of almost $400,000 in decreased DC revenue. So that's kind of a big effect of the DC charges being, or the DC collection being reduced for those times.
Thank you. And that's the number, I'm sure, that you hear some municipalities reminding the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to make us whole. That's the decrease. That's the number. And some municipalities, it was millions of dollars. Monica.
Just to follow up, well, second question, just through you, Chair. It's the opposite side now, just with regards to the reserve fund balances. Those have actually increased over the 2 years, according to reports. So can you just highlight, again, benefit public, the major projects or areas where these funds are planned to be utilized in the coming years?
Thank you. It would be hard for me to give that off the top of my head. I can certainly bring something back, but you could access the development charges background study on our website under the finance tab, and All these projects, along with what we're estimating them to cost in 2022 dollars, are listed in there. And that basically makes up the backbone of the calculations for what our DCs per unit will be. Yeah, so unfortunately I don't have that off the top of my head, but thanks.
Okay, thank you. Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. With the DC funds going, with this report going to the province and the Watson, I guess this is a question for you, Dina. The Watson Associates, they're going to be continuing to look at what we do. So down the road, there could be another bylaw to increase with that report.
Yes, actually correct. We're in the middle of a DC background study currently. We're at the information gathering stage right now. We anticipate that Watson's will be coming forward with a DC bylaw by the end of the summer. So we'll see what the study shows, but currently staff are going through with Watson's updating the projects that are coming forward that we may not have known about in 2022 and giving some additional growth information and servicing information so that they can provide that again in this fall. Yeah.
Thank you, Dina. Monica.
Thank you. Just to that point of Councillor Shipston to CAO, with regards to Watson Associates, I understand the report will come. Is there anything, any preliminary findings right now or recommendations that we should be considering at this stage?
Thank you, Councillor. No, at this stage, we can't preempt what their recommendations are going to be. They're really gathering all the data that they need to compute that, and it's not something I have the technical ability to even think about doing, but they have a lot of factors that they put into determining what development charges they're going to recommend. And we're hopeful that they do provide an increase, but we'll see what happens.
Look forward to that report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barb.
Thank you. Through you, I'm sure the developer isn't looking forward to an increase in DCs, but I questioned in 2022 the reduction of the urban development charges eligible versus the rural. Rural went up the same value that the urban went down. What I do appreciate that the Deputy Treasurer Akash did convey is that we're watching very closely Bill 185 and the commitment by the province to reverse its phase-in of development charges. In 2023, as you indicated, the CAO indicated, is that we lost about $400,000. We continue to advocate to the province to make us whole for that, but fingers crossed, Bill 185 will pass and we will not be seeing a further phase in 2024. I'm sure it's not retroactive.
No, can't imagine. Okay, any other questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Tile drainage loan policy. Would someone care to move that, please? Joan and Jim. Taylor, are you?
Yes, I'll
yes,
take
you
it.
are. There, please.
So the tile drainage loan policy, the original one was drafted, I believe, in 2008 or 2010. So I just wanted to bring this forward as there were many updates. In conjunction with myself and our tax collector working with OMAFRA, we decided it was prudent to get some changes added to the policy, such as that the resident or the property owner does not have any arrears to the township. So that's the main difference you'll see, but there are some other small variances that OMAFRA and working with the Tile Drainage Act suggested that we change.
Thank you, Taylor. Any questions? Barb.
Through you, and thank you, Taylor, for the report and for your comments back with regard to applicants. Not all farm owners who tile drain actually apply for a loan. So our oversight only applies to those that actually apply for a loan. What I did want to encourage that for those that don't seek loans and are tile draining, that they do seek licensed contractors. As a member of the Conservation Authority, it's so important to hire reputable contractors to ensure that they're not found in violation of any environmental standards, draining of wetlands, tiling a wetland. So first point of contact, if I could just put it out there, contact Conservation Authority if you're in a regulated area, to make sure that your contractor is reputable and following all the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Monica.
Thank you, Mayor, Chair. Just through you to our treasurer, just around the loan. So when we look at the loan limit increases, considering all the rising costs when it comes to agricultural improvements, is there any possibility of increasing the maximum loan to above 50,000 in the future?
Thank you for the question. So this is stipulated through the Ontario government. We are just a vehicle for the loan, essentially. Yeah, so we don't have oversight on that end of it.
Oh, just a follow up. So with that in mind, thanks for that clarification. If we were to be looking at loan default protocols, in terms of what protocols would be in place in case the recipient defaults on loans, how does that impact township financials?
So the loan is set up as a debt on the person's property taxes. So then we would have that avenue for collections.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the bylaw regarding the aforementioned report. Barb, you'll move. Second by Jason. Anything to add, Taylor?
No further comments.
Okay. Any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Next report is the 2024 tax rates. It's always a crowd pleaser. Someone care to move that, please? Martin and Monica. Thank you. Taylor?
Okay, thank you again. So with working with MTE and our tax collector again, we've updated the rate table for the year based on our approved budget rate. And then this is just scheduling the final tax billing deadlines.
Excellent. Thank you, Taylor. Any questions? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Then, of course, the bylaw to enact the aforementioned report. Someone care to move that, please? Monica and Martin. Anything to add, Taylor? Nope. Any questions? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Taylor. That concludes your reports, and Cash, appreciate your indulgence. Now we move over to the clerk, Lindsay. She has a report there regarding a purchase and sale agreement for the Proton Pit. Need a mover.
Declaring interest.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. Someone care to move that? Martin, seconded by Joan. Yeah, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Milne, through you. This one's pretty straightforward, gives a bit of the background here, and this is just approving the purchase and sale agreement. Council has seen this before, and the sale will close shortly after this meeting if approved.
Very good. Thank you, Lindsay. Any questions on that particular report? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Then the bylaw regarding that purchase and sale agreement with Pallister Farms, moved by Barb, seconded by Jim. Thank you. Anything to add, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay. Any questions on the bylaw? No. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. The next one is the renaming bylaw, which I have declared, I will declare pecuniary interest. So I'll hand the chair to the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. And we are now going to be it resolved that council receives staff report CL 2024-2022 for information, and that council provide feedback and direction to staff on the proposed renaming of sections of Southgate Road 26 and Homestead Road as presented. Could I get a mover and seconder, please? Martin? Monica? Clerk Lindsay Green.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. So I apologize for not including the application. That will get, Holly will get that uploaded with the, when the minutes get published. So the application was submitted to just rename the section between, 41 and Homestead Road. So that was what the application was for. Then staff added the other piece. So we did also run this by the county. There was some comments about emergency services. That's all looked at the county level through that process. And there was positive comments from them. But really, I just am looking for for council's direction on this. We've obviously seen this in the past. So looking to know what council wants to do for the future here.
Thank you. Could you just clarify, the application was only for renaming the section between 41 and the Homestead Resort as Wilder Lake Road?
Correct.
And it was staff who are recommending that the portion between Southgate 26, Old Railroad Road to Wilder Lake, the newly named, if that goes through, Wilder Lake is Homestead?
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Jason?
More of a comment than a question. I would have to agree with our open forum speakers that I don't see the point in changing all these names and we always talk about staff having all this work. I don't see the point in it, simply.
Monica?
Yes, just to echo those comments of Councillor Rice, I have to speak to what we heard today again with regards to in the open forum. And I feel I thank the people for coming, the Arnett's, because I get, a deeper understanding. There's a bit too much confusion and safety concerns for me to support that. So I agree. I probably think it's better just to keep it the way it is.
Joan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I do believe that we should keep the street name as it is. I have to echo that with what the speakers delegated this morning with the name change and the mailbox and this and everything that comes with it. So I am on the fence of keeping the name as it is. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I'll call Martin.
Uh,
Oh, okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Martin.
My
I'll go to the clerk.
My attitude is if it's not broke, don't fix it. So.
Okay. The clerk?
If I could just get an amendment with clear direction, I have something typed up if we're at
okay.
that point.
All right. Given the comments so far at the table, the clerk has a amended wording if you want to share that, and then we can see if the mover and seconder are satisfied. I will make a comment myself is regardless of the insignificant cost of road signage blades, there is a cost of staff time and also of the residents' time and the business's time to apply for all of the title changes and the licensing changes and things like that. So there's that non financial cost to having this.
So the amendment would be that council amend the second clause of the motion to direct staff to not proceed with further discussions about renaming this section of roadway and direct staff to advise accordingly if future applications are received for this section of roadway.
Is that okay with the mover and seconder?
Yep.
Then I will.
No, it's an amendment. So we need a mover and seconder for the amendment.
Okay. Sorry, it's not a friendly amendment. I see. I need to move Jason and Martin for the amendment.
Can we have recorded vote?
Yes. Clerk Green, would you like to take the vote, please?
Yep.
On the amendment?
So recorded vote for the amendment, Deputy Mayor Dobrin.
In favor. Think
Counselor
about what it was.
Counselor Singh Sours.
Yes.
Mayor Milne has declared a conflict. Counselor Ferguson,
Yes.
Counselor Shipston,
Yes.
Counselor Rice,
Yes.
Counselor John.
Yes.
By a vote of 6-0, that's carried.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I will now call the vote for the motion as amended.
A call for
Yes.
recorded vote.
Recorded vote is called by Monica Singh Sours.
Recorded vote called for the main motion as amended. Counselor John,
Yes.
Counselor Rice,
Yes.
Counselor Singh Sours,
Yes.
Mayor Milne has declared a conflict. Counselor Shipston,
Yes.
Counselor Ferguson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobrin.
In favor.
By a vote of 6-0, that's carried.
Thank you. I will now hand the floor back to Mayor Milne.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, moving on. The next is the report regarding flag protocol and proclamation policy approval. Someone care to move and second that? Martin will move. Joan will second. Madam Clerk?
Through you. Thank you, Mayor Milne. This was at the last council meeting, and staff were provided direction at that meeting to remove any proclamations. So the policy was largely shortened by removing that section. So this is would be the policy going forward. The flag portion, nothing changed with it, and nothing really changed with it compared to the last one. We just tightened up our procedures for lowering of the flags, but only, as I mentioned at the last meeting, only the township and municipal and provincial flags were flown. None of that changed with this policy. So the only thing here was removing the proclamations.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Questions? Any questions, comments? Monica?
Just through you, Chair, to the clerk in regards to the amendments that were made on the report. What was the consultation involvement with the public, local agencies, and further comparative municipalities? Was any of that included?
So through you to Councillor Singh Sours, prior to the previous meeting, I consulted with a lot of the clerks in the Grey County area, based a lot of it on their policies, some other municipalities outside the area. That's largely what made that change and added to that policy with the proclamation piece. Since the direction from council, there wasn't anything really more to do, so I just simply took out that proclamation piece. So then that's what's been brought back.
Just want to follow up.
Sure,
to that.
go ahead.
Yeah, so just a comment now in regards to that. I appreciate that so much. I do believe that as a council, we would want to have the proper consultation in all decision making. I find that this is a bit too final and premature to put this kind of policy in place. If we looked at the last 8 years, we could see that there was probably 2 proclamation requests. If I'm wrong, let me know. And then if we were to double it for the next 8 years, we'll probably have 4. So I think that is a bit premature to put this in place. And it's also the immature because it hasn't had a chance to grow in the sense that I believe that there were some comments made at the last meeting that we're here to do sewers and water and roads, but I find that that's only part of what council does. We lead from the top, and we also need to understand intrinsically with intangible things in the community, with bringing inclusivity and unity. So I find that before such a final decision being made, that we should strongly consider public consultation, local agencies who are experts in this area be considered, and also comparator municipalities that are more in line with Southgate's growth. All of this will actually support the 5-year strategic plan, which we paid almost $30,000 for a consultant to do for us. So I think that we should honor that work And before making such a final decision for this proclamation, that we would have that input first. And I know that later we'll be having our media specialist speaking to that. And that would be a great opportunity to be able to include the public, whether it be through surveys, town hall, what have you. But yes, I think it's premature and immature at this moment to put such a final policy in place that again, is premature and immature.
Thank you. And I will just say that no different than any other policy that we put in place. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that says that residents cannot come to council and delegate asking for an exemption from any policy or to change the policy or waive the policy. There's no reason why anybody couldn't do and make that request going forward. This is just saying that our default policy is that we will not proclaim anything, but you know, things can change and people can ask for whatever they want. Martin.
Yeah, just to comment, as you said, Brian, it's not to say that people can't have the proclamation. They can say whatever they want. They could probably use our electrical signs saying, this is this month or this is this week. We're not saying you can't do it. It's just that time, a warden, mayor, deputy mayor, staff. I was in Shelburne just the other day, picking up stuff for work, and they have their electronic signs all over the town. And it gets to the point, who do you give it to? There's only so many months. May is Jewish Heritage Month. Good for them. Polish Heritage Month. May. Good for them. Asian Heritage Month. Good for them. Dutch Heritage Month. Great. We're not saying you can't do it, just not an official proclamation where staff have to do a thing, where we have to go. That's all this means. It's not, we're not saying you can't do it. Put it on your own social media.
Thank you. Jason, you were next. And then
Oh,
Monica.
I was just gonna say, I appreciate your comments. I looked into it more after the last time. The flag policy, that's perfect. I think keep that, and no, I'll support it as long as there's no proclamations. It's good with me. More of a comment than.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Monica?
Yeah, so just to further, I understand the sentiments. My main concern is that we need public consultation, local agency consultation, and more comparator municipalities that are in line with the growth of Southgate. I'm not saying that we're not to have an implemented policy that says no proclamations. I think that it is not researched enough to make such a final proclamation. We are not receiving even 3 or whatnot, to the point that such a final decision needs to be made. And at Grey County, when the no proclamation policy, these are 14, 20-year policies. When Grey County said no to that, it was also said that each municipality should look at what would work with their residents. So I just find that when we look at top-down leadership, you know, there's a demonstration of thoughtfulness when proclamations are made. There is a place for it. And there can be limits placed on different things, how they are done. I just don't like to shut down the voice. It's not just about doing celebration or token things to say that, okay, we're recognizing. Something is to be said when a statement is made from the government in that particular location. So for me, I would, if anything, want to put an amendment through that there would be at least be more, a little bit more research that would include the first 3 things I just mentioned, that there would be public consultation, local agency consultation, and more comparative municipalities to what we're doing.
Thank you, Monica. Any further questions? Okay, call the question.
Can I move an amendment
Or
no?
just in a second. I had Barb's hand up here first, then I'll come back to your amendment. Barb?
Through you, I think public consultation, as you said, Mayor Milne, we are always open to hearing from residents. I, in fact, and I believe the rest of council likely received in excess of 30 emails, some for, most against. And I think that we had ample debate at the last meeting. I would be concerned about the additional cost of staff time to do further research, to do further public consultation when this has been on the agenda. We could have received more input from council, from the residents between last Thursday and today. And it seemed that everybody silence on the subject, they're satisfied that we have selected the right path forward. So since you have someone, I was going to call the question, but since you have recognized Councillor Singh Soares for an amendment, we'll address that first.
Monica, you want to introduce an amendment?
Yes, and just to, before I do that, just to, comment, just to push back a little bit on that, the public silence's approval. I push back on that completely. I don't think so, in terms of how busy people are. People are planting right now, people are going to work. I think that is untrue in that way. I don't think the public really does understand even what this is. That's why awareness and education is important. And so in terms of how many responses came in that was for and against, I also push back on that. I don't see that, that's something that's kind of just said, not really firm. But further to that, for amendment, I would want to just move that there would be a little bit more research on that. Again, I'm really looking from a place that approving the proclamation process at this point, like I said, could be premature and immature, and it could be opening up a little bit more negative potential repercussions in the public, and that's all I'm asking for. If it comes down to no proclamations at the end, totally support it, but I feel that the public should, more public and ways of public being able to understand what's even going on. Many people don't know to that level. So I'm just asking that there be informed decision-making. So whatever that amendment would look like in the wording, I'm not the best at it. I know the clerk is great, but I would just put forward that there be, before this approval is made, that a few more steps be taken. And I think the finances are worth looking into this. And I don't think they're so astronomical as it's being put forward.
Okay, thank you. Just before we ask the clerk for verbiage, I think everybody understands where you're going with that amendment or your request. I need a seconder for that amendment. Seeing no seconder, that amendment dies. So now we're back to the original approval protocol and the report. Any further questions on the report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
I just like call a recorded vote.
Absolutely, you can. Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Milne, recorded vote called for staff report CL. Let me get the name. CL 2024-024 flag protocol and proclamation policy approval. Councillor Shipston,
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson,
Yes.
Mayor Milne,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Delbreen,
In favor.
Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor John,
Yes.
Councillor Singh Soares.
Nope.
By a vote of 6-1, that's carried.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we're on to the bylaw regarding the aforementioned report. Someone care to move that bylaw? Martin, seconded by Jim. Thank you. Any discussion? A recorded vote has been requested.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. Recorded vote requested for bylaw 2024-068 to adopt policy number 51, the flag protocol and proclamation policy. Mayor Milne,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Delbreen,
In favor.
Councillor Rice,
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson,
Yes.
Councillor Singh Soares,
Nope.
Councillor Shipston,
Yes.
Councillor John.
Yes.
By a vote of 6-1, that's carried.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to, and thank you for your reports there. I think that concludes your section. Yes, it does. So we're moving on to Public Works Manager Jim Ellis's report. He has one here regarding the Holstein Sand Shed roofing replacement. This is a high priority. roof high. Barb? Seconded by? Martin, thank you. Jim?
Morning, good people. Operations brought this to our attention that we've got some damage happening there. Half the roof was replaced in 2013. We had other numerous roofs being replaced during that cycle, and that was all our budget could allow at the time. I believe for that 2013 work, it was 16,800 or somewhere in that range, but we've built in a little bit of contingency for if some plywood needs replacement or anything else that they find as they come along.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Any questions? Martin?
Yeah, Jim, the shingles, are they gonna be 25-year or the asbestos or not the fiberglass one? Yeah, asbestos. Why put that on?
Probably
Yeah, I
not
know.
going there.
No, we
going
don't
there.
want to do that. No, there's some that get fiberglass in them. They're really 25, 30. What year span kind of shingles you looking at?
Yeah, I believe the last go around and what we'd recommend is 30-year. But let's be realistic, sometimes you get 15 if that, so.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Jim. Chief Administrative Officer Dina Lundy. She has two reports here. The first one regarding AMO conference delegation requests. Someone care to move that, please? Martin, thank you. And Joan? Dina?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. This report is just bringing forward a recommendation for delegation requests at the AMO conference in August. We have been successful in advocating for a number of things. In this instance, we have been waiting a significant amount of time for the announcement to fund our medical center. And I think it's important that we keep this issue at the forefront with our ministries, particularly with the changes in healthcare that are coming forward. And so that is my recommendation, and happy to take any further recommendations from council.
Thank you, Dina. And I can tell the group that at the announcement for the school in Dundalk there last week now, the minister made a remark that, oh, okay, I don't want to hear anything more from Southgate. I said, not a chance. We're coming right after you. Well, not him specifically, but his government for funding for this medical center. So we're going to push like the Dickens to do that. Any questions? Martin?
More a comment. When we have the delegation or whomever is going there, would you just kind of coincide with what Brian said about the school? Would you push that aspect of why we need it? It was 2021 that we said the shovel was in the ground. It'd probably be another 5 years, but that growth aspect will be the kicker.
Absolutely. With the report, I've attached the delegation materials from their last kick at the can, I guess you could say, which includes the highlight of, the premier coming to Dundalk to break ground on this facility that has not been funded yet. So we definitely are pushing those aspects with the ministries.
Thank you, Dina. Any further questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Next report is Flato Edgewood Greens Phase 2B final acceptance. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, thank you. And Barb, thank you. Dina.
Thank you, Worship. This is coming forward as we have done a calculation. We've received final acceptance letters from Triton, and Crozier Engineering has provided a summary of the securities that we're currently holding for Flato. It has become a little more complicated because there is an arrangement with the township that the collective securities is what we focus on. So there are other stages, I guess, or parts of subdivisions that are also have final acceptance, but we can't return those securities at this time because we have to maintain a total amount of securities. So in this case, we are looking at phase 2B on the screen there, which is fully complete. Triton has provided their recommendation that the securities can be released, and the security summary shows that we can release a total of $50,000. In this case, it does leave the municipality a little bit short in the amount of about $7,000. And that is being recommended because we are tracking these securities and letters of credit. We want to just release the one so that we are trying to maintain a better tracking for going forward.
Thank you, Dina. Just to be clear, it was 2B or not 2B?
That is the question.
Yep. Anyway, any questions? Yeah, I'll stop. Any questions? Jason.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's gonna leave us, I get it's a security in a deficit though, why do we have to release the full 50? Why can't we, is that?
We can certainly do that from a tracking and accounting perspective. It doesn't make sense
I
to
get
hold
that, but-
$7,000 on a LC, but I'll take direction from council. We do have a total of well over $5 million in securities.
Yeah, I get that.
It's more for selfishly for staff to be able to just maintain a more clean tracking.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Barb, my mistake.
Quite all right. I just had a question through you to Jim. Dina was kind enough to explain when we assume a road. And Jim, could you elaborate on when we're now assuming this road, it meets the thickness of pavement, you will then start plowing this road, or are we already plowing many of these phases?
Jim?
Yeah, so in the subdivision agreements, basically at 75% of occupancy, we take assumption of plowing and other soft services that way too. Although prior to that, we have been plowing some, and there's a charge back on those services provided with below 75% occupancy. You're right, a number of these phases do have over 75% occupancy that we've been maintaining here in this past winter, so.
Thank you, Jim.
And a good job.
Jason?
I guess to that point, Jim, the roads we have been plowing and they pay us for our services. Just wondering, I don't know if it's to Dina or the trip, are we all paid up on everything? Have we been paid for plowing all them roads? Because I heard some rumors in the winter, but I'm just wondering.
I don't have that information with me today.
Taylor, do you have anything?
No, I don't. I'd have to get AR to look into that specifically, but.
I know we try to stay as current as we can, but you never know. Martin?
So the 7,000 is like a drop in the bucket compared to the 5, but at the end of the day, we still have the 5 million. That's 7,000. At the end of the day, will it be absorbed, or is it something the township will absorb right now? This is just to keep this moving along, right?
Yes, and I did float that by Triton, and it wasn't a flat out request. The staff floated it by Triton to see we are fully secured and we have no risks with releasing an extra $7,000.
Yeah, go ahead.
To you, Jim, to that point, so Triton has approved to release it. Do we go out and inspect 100% everything that before we assume that? Figured do.
Jim?
Yeah, ourselves and both engineering firms, as plus the developer representation, we go on site, we do walks about and check if there's a deficiency list made. Those deficiencies have to be corrected before we would get to this final stage. So, yeah, and sometimes there's a couple walkthroughs before we get to this point as well. So it's a team effort. There's lots of eyes looking at all kinds of different things from right away to right away. So we're not looking if there's shingles on the roof of a house. That's not what we're looking for.
Thank you, Jim. Joan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Chuyu. Is there a time limit to collect back this deficit from the builder?
Dina?
Sorry, Counselor John, I'm a little confused with your question. Could you clarify?
Oh, because you said it will leave the township in a 7,118.35 deficit from the required that money, or it just stays as a deficit, or how does that work?
Thank you, Counselor John. It would not come back to the township. In fact, as the developments continue to be final accepted, we would continue to release further securities going forward. So if you look at the Crozier summary attached to the report, it kind of shows where we are oversecured in places and where we're undersecured, but we wouldn't be looking to collect that back from the developer as securities to hold, because the township is decided that we really don't need to continue to hold that. But if council is concerned, we certainly can reduce the amount that we're returning. Staff have no issue with that. It was simply to make it a little easier for staff to track. But we're happy to do whatever council wishes.
Thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Dina.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I guess it's to Dina on that point you just made. Maybe we can't, maybe it's off topic, but you say we're under secured on some projects. Why is that?
The amount, because we have a security reconciliation report that historically has been provided as part of the subdivision agreement for release of securities. And that's why we're not releasing certain securities, because some of the other developments that are coming forward are not fully secured. So we continue to hold those. And it's just for ease of all these developments tracking them. You can see that there are some developments that are done that are ready to be released, and we're not doing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dina. Okay, not seeing any further questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried.
Motion to go past noon by order of the clerk.
Oh, very optimistic. But sure. Seconder? Martin, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, thank you very much, Dina, for those two reports. Moving on to HR Manager Kayla Best, who is on the line with us this morning. She was. Oh, there she is. Welcome, Kayla. She has a report here regarding working alone policy. Barb's going to move that, seconded by Martin. Thank you. Kayla, welcome.
Thank you. So this report is just, we hadn't reviewed our working alone policy since 2012. So we did a revamp of it. But part of that is because it is a health and safety initiative, we are moving it to our health and safety manual, which isn't approved by council necessarily. It's just that it follows our health and safety policy that council has approved previously.
Thank you, Kayla. Are there any questions? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. We sure can. So thank you, Kayla. That concludes your report. The planning department is next. We've done a lot of it, but I think we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at, well, let's say 11:45. We'll reconvene the meeting. Bring it back to order. So we're back in the planning department now. So Victoria, good morning. Good afternoon.
Good
It is still,
morning. Yep.
it is still morning. Yes, indeed it is. So the first
Yep.
report is regarding a site plan approval report, Martin Fabrication Inc. Someone care to move that, please? Jason and Joan. Victoria, welcome.
Thank you, Mary Milne. Okay, so this is again for Martin Fabrication Inc. They're looking for site plan approval for proposed on-farm diversified use at their site on 8662 Highway 89. It's a 4-hectare farm parcel along Highway 89 and was rezoned in September 2023 to allow small-scale dry industrial use accessory to the farm operation. Sorry, I have a dog in the background, of course. The proposed, okay, good. The proposed on-farm diversified use includes 450 square meter outside storage. They have a 650 square meter workshop, power room, and loading dock within the A1 54545 rezoned area. The comments we received some from MTO included that the applicant acquire an MTO entrance permit. And from staff review, we determined that the proposed on-farm diversified use conforms with the A1 545 zoning and the official plan policy. One condition of the approval is the execution of a site plan agreement to stipulate the maximum combined floor area of the office, power room, and lunchroom, which should not exceed 750 square meters, and the outdoor storage shall be 500 square meters maximum. And happy to answer any questions on this one.
Thank you, Victoria. Are there any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Next one is the bylaw regarding the aforementioned report, site plan agreement for Martin Fabrication Inc. Someone care to move that, please? Martin, second. Jim, anything to add, Victoria, on the bylaw? Okay, thank you. Any questions from council? All those in favor? That is carried. Next one is a site plan approval application from Moses and Anna Bauman. Mover and seconder, please. Jason and Jim. Victoria.
Thank you. We have Brown Day, another on-farm diversified use site plan approval. I just wanted to note underneath the recommendation on the first page, there's an error. It states that it's for Martin Fabrication Inc. It should say Moses and Anna Bauman, so apologies. Just wanted to note that. So again, this approval is for site plan approval at 225814 Southgate Road 22. Again, it's a 40-hectare farm parcel rezoned in October of 2023 to permit small-scale dry industrial use along the farm. The proposed on-farm diversified use includes a 500 square meter outdoor storage and a 650 square meter shop within the A1 548 rezoned area. We received some comments from the Township Fire Department, so they've included that there's a requirement for a water reservoir to be installed, a fire reservoir hose connection, and a fire safety plan to be updated before occupancy and to be approved by the fire chief. And staff's review of the proposal, we determined that the on-farm diversified use conforms with the A1 548 rezoned area and the official plan policy. Again, condition is to execute site plan agreement to stipulate the maximum of the combined floor area of the office, power room, and lunchroom, which should not exceed 750 square meters, and the outdoor storage shall be a 500 square meter maximum as well.
Thank you, Victoria. Any questions regarding that report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Then we have the bylaw regarding the preceding report for Moses and Anna Bauman, site plan agreement. Someone care to move that, please? Martin and Jim. Yeah, I'll get that right. Any questions from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Victoria. That concludes the planning section of the meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Moving on to Strategic Initiatives Officer Graham Taylor. Thank you for your patience, Graham. I only saw you nod off once there. Well, he didn't fall out of the chair, but he did close his eyes. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, I'm kidding. He was fully alert the entire time. So, Graham has a report there regarding communications, community engagement strategy, project charter. That's a big word. Barb moves, second by Joan. Thank you. Graham, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everyone hear me there all right with this?
Yep.
Perfect. So what's before you right now is just a project charter for the communications and community engagement strategy. This is mainly a project management tool that I'm hoping to kind of bring in with a lot of the strategic initiative work. So on the strat plan, you'll see various items, but from there to what they look like in finality, there's really not a lot of clarity. It's kind of a bit of a black box into how things get achieved in terms, especially for the public, but more so for members around the table's convenience as well. I'm hoping to kind of bring this in as a tool to show how the work gets done as maybe an accountability measure as well. So this particular project charter, if you skip ahead to page 216, it focuses on the community engagement and communication strategies. They were listed as items 13A and B respectively. Oh,
Barb?
Page 216.
242 actually in the
okay
of the package.
Yeah, because some of us are not in a PDF format, you could go, what attachment was it? And then we could follow along, or if Holly is able, we could working on it to show us. Thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, what you see here is the project charter. It'll outline a description of the project. So in this case, what we're really looking at is a strategy, looking at how we're going to engage with our community on various matters of decision, as well as communicate key municipal messages to the broader public. There's a lot of things that fall in scope and out of scope with this project. More specifically, this won't have anything to do with reducing levels of statutory communication. So various things that are done under the Planning Act that are in Victoria, Ken, and Bill's world, this won't be touching how property owners are notified of impending decisions or things like that. This is really about how we as a municipality are going to communicate with the public in a discretionary matter. So that's really what we're looking at here. There's a lot of benefits to this work that I see. There's a lot of potential, but we're maybe not utilizing our full potential as a communications body and apparatus right now. We currently have social media followings of in excess of near 2,500 people. And combine that with other mediums, we're well in excess of 2,500 people as well. So really getting messages out that are strategic to that body is something that I think is quite important. Skipping ahead, you'll see for the process, we're going to be hopefully launching a community questionnaire. If you as council endorse this, we'll be launching a questionnaire. And this questionnaire focuses on a wide range of communications things with our resident base. So looking at things like how they consume media, how they receive their news, what they receive from the township currently, what they would like to receive from the township in the future. Once we know that information, we can really start to draft a communication strategy that will help administrators know what needs to be communicated with the public, what mediums we want to be using to do so, mediums being the tools and platforms, and going about it that way. I'm hoping to bring the draft strategy once we have some kind of clarity to you in August, as well as the final strategy with some feedback from council, likely in September. If you were to go below to the second appendix is the community survey or questionnaire. And this really is a pretty in-depth questionnaire, in my opinion, that we would put out to the public. Normally, I wouldn't put something this long out to the public. However, in this case, given that it's pretty fundamental for a lot of them that they haven't been engaged in this manner before, I think this is something that will be quite useful. You can see, I think we could give it to all 7 of you as council and probably get 7 completely different answers. So it's not like we're going in a one direction survey with this. I really do believe the insights from this will be useful, and ultimately we will have a better product taking the time to do this community engagement as a result of it. And with that, I'd be happy to turn over to any of you for any questions.
Thank you, Graham. I would just note that doesn't everybody get their news from the Dundalk Herald, Mary? Right,
Has to
exactly.
be.
Okay, so there's your first survey question answered right there,
Perfect.
right off the hop. All right, questions, Monica?
Thank you, through you, Chair, and welcome, Grandma. I didn't realize it was you that I spoke to at the press release for
Yes.
school. I just realized that was you. Great to see you again. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. Welcome to Southgate.
Thank you.
In regards to inclusivity and representation, I just wanted to ensure that, as part of the strategy, it's crucial to ensure that inclusivity and representation of all community members, including those from underrepresented, marginalized groups, people with accessibility issues, those with language barriers. Just wanted to ensure that the survey must be accessible to all. So what are we doing besides, let me just backtrack for a moment. I think that print materials are still really important. What is being put into place to accommodate diverse needs, not just being like language barriers, but people, again, with accessibility issues, people don't use, during our digital transformation and traditional methods. One of the main things that I've found to be quite, which I just spoke to earlier, that I would reiterate again, that there's not informed sometimes decision making. And so I find that it's really important that we have the methods in place to ensure that all will be able to make these proper decisions. So I just wanted to ask you for that, touching on inclusivity and representation.
Yeah, I would certainly completely agree that every communication, especially when it comes to engagement we do, has to be representative to all members of our community. Actually, as someone under 25, I technically fall under one of those groups as a youth when it comes to underrepresented people in decision making in government. So I'm a big believer in that myself. I will say that we are hoping to distribute paper copies as well at various municipal facilities. We won't be mailing this out just given the barriers of doing so and the associated costs of doing that, as well as data duplication issues. But I'm also hoping that you around the table will help distribute this through your various influences in the community, whether it be telling people, sharing on social media, or directing people where they can get print copies. With any of this, the larger the sample, the better. That's really what I believe in. When it comes to making sure that people that maybe aren't typically involved with the municipality know, that's certainly something that I'm looking at expanding our reach with our messaging. I'm hoping to do that by hopefully some paid boosting for posts. That'll make sure that we can target it to people who live in Dundalk, live in Drumore, live anywhere. We can target pretty specifically when it comes to that. So I'm hoping we can use everything we can digitally to do that. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do that digitally than it is with paper. I can't track down people and put paper in their face that easily. That being said, I'm certainly hoping that we can use as diverse of a approach to make sure our sample is as large as it can be. When it comes to language barriers, municipalities are a little bit, we do operate in the English language, and that is primarily how we operate. That being said, if there are community members who do not speak English, I would direct them to contact the town office, and we'll try and work with them. We're hoping to use SurveyMonkey as the digital platform. So that will hopefully reduce some of the areas, as I know they can translate to some degree. I don't know how good it is. I think it's kind of like Google Translate, where it's maybe not the best, but it gets the point across. So that's hopefully what we'll be relying on to expand the reach. And again, that's a better tool than what we've had in years past, to my understanding. So really just making sure that it gets distributed to the community. That's something I, as a staff person, hoping to do. And I'm also hoping that you around the table will use your influences in the community to help me do that as well, because ultimately this will inform your decision making.
Thank you, Graham. Dean, did you want to add something?
No, just to quickly interject, Councillor John and Ferguson will have to leave the meeting as they're checking out of their hotel. They are not able to stay in their rooms. So just wanted to make that note.
All right.
Bye.
I don't know. I don't know.
Want to ask them?
Well, if they're
They're leaving.
all right. All right. Thanks, folks. Thanks for being with us as long as you could.
We can probably join by phone while we're in the vehicle.
Okay.
Yes.
Jason, question.
I was just wondering, I see your questions here. There are a lot of good questions. Is this more for residents, staff relations, or is this for council as well?
This has a broad applicability. I would say that everything we do is communicated to some degree, right? So this will be for how we as an organization, meaning you and us as an apparatus, can communicate to the public. That being said, there certainly will be applications that may be more pertinent to counselors or more pertinent to staff. And also the platform we're using does give us some pretty good data manipulation tools that we can get good insights. So manipulation doesn't mean cooking the books or cooking the numbers. It means using the numbers to tell a story that fits a description. So that's what we're hoping to use as well. So the insights we get from this, I don't know what they'll be right now because it's not completed, but I'm certain that it'll have good applications to all three phases: us as an organization, you as council, and us as staff and administration.
Just to follow up, I was wondering if we could maybe add in here, and I don't know, it's maybe a kind of a pipe dream. I've always thought in the back of my mind we should have, and I know we don't get nobody out, but maybe a yearly town hall type of meeting. Put the microphone up, 2 hours, you line up, maybe council's there, department heads, and let the public shoot at us. Is that something? I know nobody comes, but I just think they would if you had one of those once a year.
So
and stand up and take the questions.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a method of engagement that I typically do not recommend using. Going back to what Councillor Singsors was saying about voices typically aren't represented. When you go to that format of engagement, that's something that tends to not bring out voices that are typically already given a pretty big platform and voice in the community. That's my assessment of various communities I've worked in, whether it be working in municipal government or on the consulting side. I would recommend various asynchronous tools because it allows people to give us more diverse feedback that's maybe not intended for the public forum. Maybe individualized concerns, maybe concerns explicit to their interactions that typically aren't best addressed in the public forum. That being said, if that's something that you wish to see once we present the draft strategy, I act at your direction. But that being said, it's not a method of engagement that I typically advise using. I'll give some examples at a former employer where we did that for 8 straight hours regarding a short-term rental bylaw. And what I found was that typically it's the people that have influence in the community that are, typically from backgrounds of 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation residents that come out to these things that already likely know some counselors, and they're typically the ones that participate in those mediums of engagement. I believe in providing the microphone equally to all voices, and that includes voices that are new to the community, young, old, various backgrounds as well. And that typically isn't conducive to that, nor do you get anything that you can say is representative of your community. If you choose to do it as an information spreading forum, that's a different idea. But in terms of getting feedback from residents, I would argue that's very much not a representative sample of feedback from your constituents that you would likely want to make decisions from. That's all I would say on that one.
Thanks, Graham. Dina, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just to add to Graham's remarks, I've had a lot of experience with both, and I tend to agree with Graham on town halls. What we did in some of my previous experience was we, instead of having town halls, introduced more of a casual kind of events more frequently during the year. So I'm in Wasaga, for example, we instituted Coffee with Council, and that was done about quarterly or 6 times a year. And this was was held in a park, and the residents would come and be able to mingle with council and bring up their issues. And we saw more engagement with that than we did at formal town halls. And at formal town halls, we saw more animated kind of behavior where it wasn't comfortable for a lot of the residents to speak their minds. And in some of these other type of events, you don't have that sort of behavior. And we have a lot of residents that just want to come and talk to particular counselors, the mayor, the deputy mayor, or all of you individually, and share their concerns or celebrations for both. So I tend to agree with the sentiment of town halls, but that's just my comment. But we will definitely go out to the public with that.
Graham.
Yeah, I just add one thing that when it comes to engagement, it's no different than when Mr. Ellis's department is designing a bridge. You very much get the output that you design. If you design your engagement so that as few people can participate as reasonably possible as it is when you have single microphone in front of a room of people, you get an output that represents as few of people as it allows. When you use asynchronous methods like questionnaires and surveys, when you maybe do door canvassing, if on certain issues it allows for it, whatever your engagement may be, where you're going to the people, to all kinds of people in the community, that typically leads to better outputs and thus better decision making. I would say that in the public policy space, how we engage with people is something that we as professionals have wrestled with for probably close to 10 years, especially in a more deliberate manner. And I would say that this is meant to cause some maybe thought-provoking discussions, and that's what I hope it achieves today. But that's ultimately where I would say is that it's the consensus now is that we be deliberate with who we're interacting with and make sure that people are included in the process, as many as possible, through methods that are comfortable for them and that they are apt to share their experiences with as well.
Thank you, Graham. Barb.
Thank you through you. Thank you, Graham, and thank you for your feedback prior to the meeting on some of my other questions on costing and things. One thing that I have a couple. First of all, in the last term of council, we did commit to having 2 town halls a year, one in the east, one in the west. We had one in the east and COVID hit, and we never did get to have that second one, but we did do one online, and it was an opportunity. It was coffee and cookies with council, and it was free skating. We had it at the arena on that particular occasion, and people who brought their children, they had an opportunity to speak, engage, as you said, in a more relaxed and personal way. So it just made us more available, and I look forward to perhaps getting back to something like that in the park, or any ideas that help us come together and celebrate or engage. My question about the survey circulation, and it may be a question for our Treasury Department. Tax bills don't go out until September, August, 1st of August. Yeah. Will we be able to take advantage of that to property owners? The difficulty with property owners is that those who rent their homes are not necessarily passing the surveys on to their tenants. And I'm not sure how we can instill in them the importance of sharing the garbage collection schedule, the newsletters and such. So I don't know if it's including 2 in the tax bill, 1 for the landowner. Please share this with your tenant if you have one. I don't know, share with a friend. Just my comment. Thank you.
Graham?
Yeah, so I would advise against distributing the survey that way. The reason being is that our survey is anonymized. We're not asking people for their name or contact information. So we'd get issues of data duplication. People would be completing the survey twice, thrice, however many times it comes to them. So that's why I would advise against doing it that way. And we'll be employing tools in the survey that make sure that people can't complete it more than once at a specific internet protocol. So that's how we'll be doing that. I would advise against distributing it that way through the tax bills. But again, you're spot on about how the tax bill has typically been how small town municipalities have communicated with their residents, and you miss out on the over 1 in 5 Canadians who rent their homes. So if you're missing out that segment, and the challenges that segment faces as a community or sub-community within your larger community, you're really missing out on a lot of valuable feedback. So I'm hoping we can transition away from some of those ways of communicating and bring in some more progressive ideas as a result.
Great. Thanks, Graham. Monica.
Just through you, Chair, to you, Graham. I really appreciate the engagement, thoughtfulness that you're having. So I just had a few quick questions. One was with regards to working with like the local businesses and the EDO with regards to maybe getting the survey out that everyone goes to Foodland, everyone goes to some of the locations, and also the committees. So Recreation Committee with the Vice Chair, myself, I'm the Chair. Jason Rice being the Vice Chair is here. So maybe that, I'm not sure if that's also been part of the strategy to possibly include that. Has that been a consideration on your end?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, I've definitely thought about recreation facilities as a good spot to distribute them. We're a little bit handicapped in that in the summer months, there's not really an indoor place to keep surveys dry and safe from the elements as an arena typically does. But that being said, we're definitely going to work with recreation to make sure that we can display as many as we can at the premises of our recreation facilities. With businesses as well, if businesses were willing to be a distributing partner or even just displaying a poster that has a QR code, that's a great starting point. It may not capture everyone, but it captures as many as we reasonably can with that. So that's what I would say with that is I'm certainly hoping to work with anyone that wants to work with this to make sure that it's distributed. We're hoping to have it out for a 3 to 4 week window. So it's long enough for a survey, but it's also enough time for us to garner a good amount of response that can capture the attitudes of the community and, more importantly, the behaviors of the community when it comes to communications.
Thanks, Graham.
I just have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
To that. So that's wonderful idea with the QR code. I was kind of picturing that too. Like that would be a great conversation piece to get engagement, people talking. So I think that's a great line of thought. And has there been consideration for two quick things with regards to grants for marketing? Depending on what it is you're finding, that not you, but like what is the challenge? So there are some grants that are created, like for example, like accessibility or reaching language barriers. There's specific grants that may be available to help pay for some of the things that you wish to do but can't because there might be some funding issues. So I'm not sure if that was a consideration. And is there a place for the website to be further updated as part of the strategy? I find that the website is to be very outdated right now. It needs a lot of work to be more representative and more information to be on there, utilized even more for even local events and things like that. But that's but that's part of the engagement. So just the grants and the website have those also been a consideration on your end?
Yeah, again, through the chair, any grants as municipalities we're certainly welcome to and receptive to. We could certainly look out for as many as we can find. It all depends on application. I can say that when it comes to the distribution of this survey, it'll be likely not a factor because just given the timing constraints of when we're putting this out. The second part of your question there, you touched on, yeah, the website. I'm hoping to collaborate with some of the department heads as well to make sure that our information is accurate. A lot of that will be internal house knowledge that they'll have, and they'll have to be the ones that will be working with me on that. But we're certainly hoping to launch that process sooner than later as well.
Thank you, Graham. Jason.
Just one more quick, and I guess I pushed back a bit on Grant and Dina, Graham. When it comes to the town hall thing, I get what you're saying. You're only a certain amount of people, but there is a lot of people. And whether it's right or wrong, you got to remember a lot of the older people are the voters, whether it's right or wrong. And some of them aren't into X and email and all that stuff. So I guess I just hope we're not too worried to have a town hall meeting like that we're not, like, I hope all of us up here, including staff, would be able to sit up there and answer the questions. And I don't know. I think it would be a good thing. At least try it once. I don't know. Hey, what's the hurt of trying? Like you said, Barb, we talked about it last term and then COVID hit, but I don't know. It's just something I think would be beneficial. Maybe it wouldn't. But.
Okay, thank you. Martin.
Yeah, I think the one thing with what you were talking about as a town hall and what you two are talking about a town hall. You're talking about town halls where it's policies. So you're gonna have far left, far right, and the people in the middle that the residents we want to hit are gonna be not saying a darn thing. But to have a town hall where, yeah, there's coffee there. What do you want to talk about? You're not directly about the policy, which is going to be divisive to begin with. We're talking about town halls where they can come and ask questions. Well, why did you vote for that? And then you can say, well, I voted for that because of this, or that's basically the gist you're coming from, right?
That's exactly right. It's a little less formal. So that the term town hall to me means an issue that is in the township, and then we're having a formal kind of here's the issue, let's discuss, and people go over that. And I guess we're just using a term that could mean a bunch of things. But yes, we're looking at I think the engagement that I've seen where it's more informal and people can talk to whomever they wish to talk to about whatever concerns them, it tends to work. You get more people interacting that way. That's just my experience. Doesn't mean that it's right for Southgate, and that's why we're doing the survey. Yeah.
All right, very good. Good discussion. I think we're ready for the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Graham. Thank you. Good report. I don't see any bylaws or motions listed there. Is there any notice of motion? Not seeing any. Consent items. First is regular business. There's quite a number of them there. Does anybody want any of those removed for further change? Okay, I'd take a motion to accept those. Barb and Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Correspondence is there. There's several of correspondence items as well. Anybody wish any of those removed? Someone care to move? We accept those. Monica and Martin, thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Moving on to resolutions from other municipalities. Does anybody wish any of those removed for further discussion? Someone care to move acceptance? Monica, second by Jason. All those in favor? That's carried. Closed session regarding consent. There is none. County report. Barb, do you have anything?
Well, county met and they voted to update the current mileage reimbursement policy to adopt the Canada Revenue Agency, and the finance department committed to contacting the lower tier municipalities. There's very few that still follow the county program, so there's some financial implications to that, and more reporting obligations. So we'll learn more about it as it gets rolled out. And much discussion about the transfer of beds from the Durham Hospital and our concerns around the state of affairs with regard to our hospital, where the warden mayor is doing everything in his power to keep the dialogue open. So we're hopeful for that. And we are going to county level, going to be making a total of 6 delegation requests with a common theme of rural health, and whether that's rural health care or the rural healthy communities. So we're hopeful that we will have a few delegations at AMO also. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. So like I said, yes. Oh, members privilege. Good news. Anybody have anything? Monica.
Thank you. Just through you, Chair, just wanted to mention as part of the Recreation Committee that the community garden behind the Foodland has now been opened. And it was since 2013 that it was closed. So very great to hear that it's been reopened. And thank you to the Recreation Department, the Southeast Grey Health Center, and all that maintain it, take care of it. Please, everyone go and see that. It's wonderful. And also on July 1st, there should be a cricket opening. All of this has been confirmed through our manager, Kevin. So July 1st, there's a temporary cricket that should be opening. So more information about that will be confirmed. I just want to stop myself, just want to make sure I'm okay with the CEO to mention those items. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. And just we had a very successful Asian Heritage Month in the month of May. So that was wonderful. I did want to mention that in the last council, there was I was talking about a smart testimony, and I did it during, I think it was the correspondence piece, but because it wasn't pulled, it didn't make it to the minutes. So I want to make sure it makes it to the minutes. So I just have a bit of a summary that I just wanted to read to make sure it makes it into the minutes, because I think it's really important that it's in there and recorded. So just as a member of the SMART committee, I would like to share a heartfelt letter from Huron Shores Hospice in Tiverton, expressing their gratitude to Shawgie Mobility for their invaluable support. The letter highlights a recent experience where Shawgie Mobility provided transport for a hospice guest to visit Port Elgin's main beach during his final days. Despite initial weather-related cancellations, Shawgie Mobility, through their efforts of Angela and driver George, facilitated a memorable and meaningful visit for the guest. This compassionate service allowed the guest to enjoy the beauty of the water one last time, significantly enhancing his quality of life in his final days. The hospice guest, referred to as B in the letter, passed away peacefully on March 31st, 2024, and the hospice team is deeply appreciative of the difference that Shawgie Mobility made in his life. This testimony underscores the profound impact that community service like Shawgie Mobility can have on individuals and their families, particularly during critical moments. It is a reminder of the importance of supporting and valuing these essential services in our community. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. Nothing else. Okay, we do have a closed meeting. Be it resolved that council proceed into closed session at 12:20 in order to address 3 matters relating to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, specifically ongoing litigation updates, and a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, specifically regarding tax arrears, and that all those required remain in attendance. Someone move that, please. Barb, second by Martin. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we'll proceed into
And if you would turn on your camera right now, if you are there, sorry. I just want to introduce you to council if you have a moment. He might have stepped away. Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
Ken. So council, this is Ken Melanson, our new Senior Manager of Development and Community Services. Ken is starting off with us remotely as he is far away, but we're going to work out some arrangements until he can move. But yes, Ken, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon now, Your Worship and members of council. It's a pleasure to meet you all virtually. I look forward to meeting you in person. I've met a number of the staff in person, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Ken, and welcome to Southgate. I apologize for not doing this sooner in the meeting. I had 2 or 3 people say to me, "You got to introduce Ken," and I just forgot. Sorry, Ken.
I'm happy to patiently wait.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you for that. All right, let's proceed into closed session. And I can confirm that we only discussed those items listed on the in-camera agenda. Confirming bylaw. Someone care to move that, please? Monica and Martin, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. One more, Barb and Monica. All those in favor?